Let's react to this video by Stephanie. It's called Sorry, but K-pop beauty is a mess.
God couldn't reach me, so he made me born in Korea as an ugly girl.
To be honest, the only reason why I got an in-person meeting with an agency was because my dad used to work in the entertainment industry and they did him a favor. And it did not go well. I went in there hot, trying to pitch myself as a natural model because I was like, you guys need more natural models who don't get plastic surgery. And they basically told me to go get work done.
I don't fit the beauty standards. I'm in theory way too tan. My nose bridge is not high enough. People around me would say things like, you have to work hard in school because you're not pretty.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, there should be a diversity of different types of beauty. There isn't just one standard type. But we'll see what Stephanie has to say about this.
Here in the West, our beauty standards are pretty bad. But K-beauty standards? That's beauty standards on steroids. There is a popular little music genre in South Korea called K-pop, which actually isn't so little at all.
My daughter, by the way, loves that new movie, K-pop Demon Hunters. She's a big fan, and she's 6.
Actually is taking over the whole globe. Known as idols, K-pop singers are artificially engineered, like literally, to be walking, talking, singing, performing billboards for perfection. K-pop hasn't just taken over the music charts. It has reshaped an entire generation's standard of beauty and created like a new blueprint for physical perfection. Have you ever heard of the K-pop bands Blackpink, Twice, or IVE? Well, this is them. Very popular as much for their catchy tunes as for their perfect figures and faces.
Yeah, I think in the last video that I did on Korean beauty, we talked about how some singers actually have Botox injected into their nostrils because they don't want to see any flare of the nostrils when they're singing and performing. That's kind of an extreme, but you know, that is what's going on.
But if you thought this was like a montage of the same girl over and over and over, I do not blame you. I know I need glasses to look at my computer, but I'm not that blind, and yet all these girls' faces still look the same to me. Like it's the same girl cloned over and over and over, just in different settings and styled slightly different each time, which is downright odd, if you ask me, considering all these girls started out life looking rather different to each other, which makes sense considering they all have different parents and different genetics.
Yeah, in general, we see this in other ethnic backgrounds as well, as we do more of the same plastic surgeries for people, like the same types of procedures done in similar ways. It seems like the facial features and body features start to morph to look more similar to one another, even if they initially started off looking quite different.
Chaeryeong from ITZY. In the early years of ITZY's career, many netizens has always said Chaeryeong sticks out like a sore thumb in her group and was always voted as the ugliest female idol across several Korean sites and articles. She received so much hate that her own mother had to release a statement begging people to leave Chaeryeong alone. It's no surprise that Chaeryeong had to get plastic surgeries and minor tweaks. She had skin lightening, double eyelid surgery, lip fillers, a nose job, and buccal fat removal.
Yeah, you know, there's just so much pressure on people when they're in the spotlight to conform to a certain type of look. And it's kind of sad, but the only way to avoid that is really to not be in the spotlight, which for some people is just not acceptable. They'd rather go through all this, work and trauma, really. I mean, surgery at the end of the day is controlled trauma. So they're undergoing all this trauma to look a certain way and to look the way that people will accept them. And I wish that it wasn't this way. I mean, that it shouldn't have to be like this, but I think we do this to the people that we want to idolize. You know, we don't necessarily want to idolize someone that looks normal and just like us. We want to idolize someone who looks almost like perfection, almost like something that you wouldn't find, you know, in kind of natural world, right? And that is really what it's become. And when you put this degree of pressure on people, they're either going to conform or they have to leave the industry. And again, even if we wish that it weren't this way, that is really the pressure that these, I think, individuals in the spotlight face, whether it's in Korea or here in the States or anywhere else.
And if you ask me, the worst part about all this is not the erasure of their beautiful, unique faces, but the fact that this pursuit of K-beauty perfection likely wasn't even the girl's choice. Along with the rise of K-pop as a musical genre came the men who spied an opportunity to cash in on the craze. Nothing new there. One of the ways they realized that they could make big bucks off the insatiable desire for more K-pop music was to create child star factories.
In the high-tech metropolis of Seoul, they're building K-pop idols. And if you want to make it big, this is the place to start.
And these child star factories are exactly what they sound like. These institutions recruit children as young as the age of 9 and 10 who desperately want to become K-pop idols themselves.
That's essentially similar to what we have here with like child stars that are in that Disney or Nickelodeon, sphere, and are also basically, having this tremendous pressure put on them from a very early age to act a certain way, to look a certain way, so that they can become these mega stars. Right? It takes a lot to get there. And we see sort of the products of some of these experiments, if you will. They're not really experiments, but, these projects that these kids are going through. We've seen it with Britney Spears. We've seen it with like Ariana Grande. And, it's not necessarily the easiest for them, I think, to process as they get older when they think back to some of these experiences when they were younger and the pressures that they faced then and that they continue to face now.
These kids are placed on punishing schedules, training from the crack of dawn until deep into the night.
야, 세게 안 누른다, 나 지금. 어? 나 지금 손만 살짝 올리고 있는 거. 그거 있어요! 빼봐!
And some people just don't have it in them to undergo this degree of hardship. Their bodies might not work in this way, even if they push themselves. They might eventually psychologically crack, so in a way they start young to kind of figure out, who's got what it takes to eventually become a global superstar. I mean, only a small fraction of the people who try will eventually get there, but we're putting, incredible pressures on these young people. I wouldn't want my kid to go through that I know for sure. But for some families, I think they see it as a way out, sometimes a way out of poverty, a way to a brighter future for themselves and for their kids. And I think that's part of the reason. And maybe there are also cases where the kids seem to really enjoy it. And that's really where their, life's focus is to be this type of superstar. And in this case, in the K-pop genre.
厳しいものはないんじゃないかなって。
Every calorie is counted. Every bite of food is weighed. These kids, officially known as trainees, have their bodies monitored so closely.
I asked Hisu what her teachers think she needs to work on in order to get past her audition.
Diet.
Really? Your teacher told you had to diet?
Yeah.
About 10 kilograms.
No,
What?
like 5.
Your teacher told you to lose 5 kilos? So what are you going to do? How are you going to do that?
Don't eat.
Yeah.
항상 이게 어차피 아이돌이 본인만의 그게 아니고 그러니까 그거의 모든 화면에서 이쁘게 더 나오니까
夜食べないみたいな生活をしてて多分1日に
300 calories a day? I mean, I don't know if that's enough to even stay alive. That's wild.
本当に力が出なくて貧血は起こすしいや本当に死ぬかと思いましたね
They need to ensure that they remain below the strict weight limits set for them, with low body fat being treated as a requirement for being a K-pop idol. Like, watch this.
Required to weigh 50 kilograms or less. Oh my gosh.
되게 많이 빠졌네.
빠질 수밖에 없지 뭐 물도 못 먹었어요
아, 진짜 오랜만에 40분.
But there's a lot of activities that have these kind of strict physical requirements on young people. This is one version of it, trying to be a music star. Another one would be, training for different sports, especially if you're looking to make it into the Olympics, right? I mean, that's really extreme, the type of work that is required and the dedication and the training and the way that you have to keep your physical self to be able to perform on that high of a level. Other types of athletes, like if you're looking to do bodybuilding, also requires, such strict portion control and dieting and exercising certain muscles, trying to get each specific muscle group to be of a certain caliber so that you can shine in competitions. So anything that's highly competitive when it comes to our physical bodies is going to have a lot of demands on it. So it seems to me like training to be a K-pop star is no different. That doesn't make it right, but it's important to realize that there really is a very physical component to it, not just the endurance that you need to perform, but also, of course, the physique that one ought to have to appear, I guess, as optimal to the majority of people around the world as possible. And we can argue on whether or not, that's appropriate and if that should be an acceptable thing. But for what they're trying to attain, like, this is sort of what it takes, as sad as that may seem.
These trainees are also not allowed a life outside of their training. Wannabe idols have to adhere to strict rules set by the pop star factory bosses, no dating, no relationships, no personal life beyond the company walls. Their image is curated, their personality is polished.
Basically, no distractions, nothing that could potentially distract you from the ultimate purpose, which is really to make money for the sponsoring company, right? Let's be honest here. That's what this is about.
Their movements are rehearsed until these girls and boys become a flawless K-pop product rather than their own person.
Thousands of teenagers are desperate for their place on the K-pop production line.
My dream is to be an idol star.
This ensures that they are highly marketable, and the big boy bosses at the top can make the big bucks.
All K-pop companies have similar versions of this demanding trainee program.
We arrive at the company at 9:50 and we go to the gym at 10 to 12.
I mean, there are some elements here that are potentially positive, like having some degree of weight training that they're doing, I think can be a good positive thing for their health. Of course, it's maybe with a certain, goal in mind, which isn't just for them to be healthy, but as a byproduct of this rigorous schedule, they are doing at least some, strengthening cardio, which, overall can be positive for their body.
We do this exercise too.
That's a lot of exercise.
Yes.
Now all that is bad enough, but what's even worse, in my humble opinion, is that these trainees are also highly encouraged to undergo plastic surgery, and I'm talking plastic surgery as children.
And what I talked about in my last video related to Korean beauty is that, when you look back at the history of plastic surgery in Korea, it was really a top-down approach, meaning that it came very much from the government as far as supporting the whole plastic surgery industry. And it continues to be essentially sanctioned by the government itself. So it's very different from plastic surgery in the United States that was more born out of private practices and isn't in any way really, super condoned by the government. I mean, there's kind of like a disconnect there, if you will. But when it comes to like Korea or say Turkey, the government makes a ton of money over this popularization of plastic surgery and medical tourism to their countries. And so a lot of times the problem there is that if you do have complications in these clinics, the knowledge of those complications could potentially be swept under the rug because, the government has reason to not expose what might be going on, at least the negatives, inside their countries when it comes to plastic surgery. And this push to start people younger and younger in getting these invasive procedures, I think is extremely problematic.
整容不要整得太过分，还是可以接受的。不要整得我都认识不了就行。比如我女儿长得非常漂亮，她不需要整容。但是如果他想在某一个地方，我们也不会很反对啊。
Yeah, but the problem is that a lot of people who get plastic surgery when they're younger later on regret it. And that is the truth, right? So if you're getting it done when you're like in your teenage years or early 20s even, many people will say that if I waited a bit longer, I probably wouldn't have gotten that procedure. So that's really the biggest concern that I have. It's like, it's fine if someone ultimately decides to get plastic surgery. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I do for a living. But I think when patients are too young, it can be fraught with problems. And the last thing you want is for a person to regret having had that procedure, later in life, or a procedure that they had when they were younger. That's not what we want, right? That shouldn't happen. So the best remedy for that is to just allow people to, really ruminate over it, think about it, and then, later on, when they're a bit older, see if they still want that procedure. But the issue is, these K-pop stars are young, right? So they don't have time to ruminate and think it over. They kind of get thrown into it right away, and there's different procedures being done to them. They don't always fully, I don't think, understand the risks involved. And who knows who's even making these decisions? Is it the agents? Is it the parents? I think, the young kids are less likely to understand what's really happening to their bodies when it comes to plastic surgery.
They have to fit the K-pop beauty standards, and you can't fit the K-pop beauty standards if you have a unique face.
Another huge thing is like head size and face size.
That's so crazy in Korea.
When I first came to Korea, when I was a trainee, they were like, okay, you're gonna have to get 돌려깎기, like you're gonna have to shave your cheekbones and your jaws, because in the West, they like cheekbones and jaw. They like having that like jawline.
Defined.
But in Korea, it's all about the oval face shape, right?
And these are, again, more invasive procedures. They're called like V-line surgery, right? Where exactly as she said, portions of the bone are actually shaved down or removed. And, these are not minor procedures. The body, was not built with removing big chunks of bone in mind in the face and not having that later affect how someone's face develops and ages. But who's thinking about that? We just want, what's in the here and now. No one wants to think about, future repercussions, unfortunately. So yeah, these are big procedures. We don't even do that much V-line surgery in the United States because of the potential risks involved. Yet it seems like in Korea, that's a very routine type of procedure.
There was 1 month where all the trainees were going to their derm appointments just as normal, but they were coming back saying that they had gotten Botox and fillers. And for me, I had gotten it in like this part of my nose right here to prevent it from like flattening out like this when I smiled. And the company did also consider putting Botox in my legs. When it came to more invasive procedures, the company would actually pull us out of practice and take us to different plastic surgery clinics to have consultations.
So yeah, essentially the Botox and filler is just kind of like the gateway drug, and then they level up from there, right? So it's almost like you get a taste of what's to come, and then they start to introduce these consultations for plastic surgery, telling you need to get more invasive work done. And again, it's one thing when it's coming from within and you've given a lot of thought and you've had time to mature as a human being, and maybe you're seeing some signs of aging, but these are really young people, and they haven't had any aging. They just want to create these changes that's meant to essentially allow them to be perceived a certain way around the world as more favorably attractive, and again leading to them being more successful and making their companies more money. So that's what this is all about.
We usually would be accompanied by a training team leader, and there the plastic surgeon would look at our face and tell the training team leader what they recommended to be done, and then the training team leader would just take notes. After the training team director had taken the notes, they would go back to the company, and then they would have a meeting with all the executives, and then in those meetings the company staff and executives would look at the plastic surgeon's recommendations and then decide what procedures they wanted the trainees to have done.
So is it really any wonder that all these girls have started blending into the same person? It's literally done on purpose. When you're all getting the same surgeries to fit the same standard, it's inevitable that you're going to end up looking like clones of each other.
We create these artificial people, right, with plastic surgery that doesn't really enhance certain features that they have, but really turns them into something new. And then we put them up on the screen and we say, we want everyone to essentially admire them. And the kids are, seeing that, and they look at it and say, oh, like that's really what I should look like. And I think about that even with like this K-pop Demon Hunters movie on Netflix and all the popularity that it's gotten. And my daughter loves singing the songs, and they're very catchy. But, when she looks on the screen, even though it's like a cartoon, but, there's still the characters there. And, they all essentially are looking the same way, right? As Stephanie's pointing out here, that tall, skinny, kind of V-shaped face. So what's my 6-year-old thinking about, is that how, she should look when she gets older? Is that the premier best way to look? And it's sort of being masked with like, oh, look at these catchy songs and they're so nice. But what about like the image that's being portrayed as far as like what the ideal is? That is to me a bit concerning. I would prefer to see more diversity on screen so that she can feel more accepted and normal if she grows up not looking that way. Right? And I don't want her to feel like she has to conform by getting a lot of plastic surgery early in life. That would not make me happy.
One must also ensure that they have the perfect K-pop nose, which according to most beauty standards, the West included, must fit a certain set of rules. Small, upturned, thin, but not too thin, and just slightly pointy. The problem, however, is that a lot of East Asian women naturally have a lower, wider nasal bridge, rounder tip, and broader nostrils. Not a flaw, might I reiterate. Let me make that abundantly clear. This is an inherited trait shaped by evolution to suit regional climates. This nose shape was designed by whoever created humans to cleverly help warm and humidify the air before the ladies would breathe it into their lungs. This is genius. But that kind of nose does not fit the K-pop beauty standards. But it's okay because we have nose jobs. But there's another problem. Because of the aforementioned nasal logistics, in order to achieve the perfect K-Barbie nose, surgeons have to use silicone implants and bones from other parts of your body, or other people's bodies?
Yeah, so that's one way to do the nasal augmentation or the bridge augmentation work that she's referring to here. The other common way to do it is to take cartilage from the ribs, because there's usually not enough cartilage within the nose to do significant dorsal augmentation of the nose. So another way to do it is to take actual rib cartilage. And that's a whole other advanced surgical procedure that carries its own risk, right? So it's one thing to do it for functional purposes, or if there was a problem with an initial rhinoplasty and you need more building material, and then you can go for the rib. But this is being done as primary rhinoplasty surgery, meaning it's the first nasal surgery that the person has gotten, and they're getting this, either silicone, which is like a artificial material put into their nose that has a high complication of infections and extrusions and other problems, or they're using their own material and getting this kind of rib cartilage placed, and that too has a lot of potential issues. So, again, you're taking on quite a bit of risk for this type of nasal bridge augmentation.
In the case of YouTuber Sophie Lee, for example, she traveled to Korea to have a nose job to create her new artificial nose.
The real reason why I came to Korea is so I could get my face done.
And she had to use both bone from her own ear.
It's not the bone, it's the cartilage.
You see that? They took the bone out of my ear.
It's not the bone, it's the cartilage. There's no bone here. The bone is more internal.
And they put it in my nose.
I didn't even know we had bones in our ears. I'm sure that's cartilage.
It is cartilage. We have bones in our ears. The whole temporal bone is a bone. And then we have small little bones in our middle ear called the ossicles, and they help us hear better.
But she had to use bone from someone else and a silicone implant.
So yeah, it is possible to get a cadaveric rib, which is basically rib cartilage from a dead person, right? So that's possible. Or you can have your own rib harvested. And so it just depends on surgeon preference. But those are some of the options for getting enough cartilage to be able to do this type of augmentation.
In order to really fit the K-beauty aesthetic, you need to have the perfect head shape. And if you do not have the perfect skull, don't worry, the talented surgeons in South Korea can reshape it for you.
People are basically trying to bulk up the volume around the head so that it makes the face look smaller in comparison. The only way you can achieve this is through cosmetic procedures, fillers, and even bone cement implanted into the skull. Procedures cost thousands of dollars, and the recovery process seems like an absolute nightmare, with most patients experiencing side effects like terrible headaches, not being able to lie down for weeks, and some even suffer from neck strain due to all of the additional weight on your head.
There's also, I don't know if Stephanie's going to get into this, but hair transplants are also common to essentially reduce the size of the forehead. So that's another procedure that's fairly commonly performed for these K-pop stars.
Now, on the plus side, if you have ears that stick out like this and you feel self-conscious of them, move to South Korea. In South Korea, you would be the epitome of beauty, because in South Korea, girls are literally having filler injected behind their ears on the reg, because filler doesn't last that long, to make their ears stick out.
The ears are ideally supposed to stick out from the face at a 30 to 60 degree angle like this.
The thing is, sometimes when you get cartilage removed from the back of your ear, it can cause the ear to stick out more. So maybe with the rhinoplasty surgery, they're trying to kill two birds with one stone.
Ear filler is trending in South Korea right now. It's called elf ear filler, inspired by the magical fantasy look of elves with lifted and puffed up ears. People claim that having this ear shape makes the rest of the face look softer, smaller, and more delicate.
People are recommended to inject around 10 to 18 syringes of filler at the back of their ear in order for the elf ear effects to be noticeable. Many of these ears look like they're about to explode. These fillers don't really last for that long, and they tend to migrate around and fade away after about a year. And so in order to achieve a more permanent look, some people are also opting for hard cartilage implants. Oh, you can literally see the outline of the implant.
I doubt it's cartilage. It's probably some form of a silicone as well. That's wild. I've actually never heard of this procedure. So you never know, what people will think of. Essentially, it's like the opposite of the otoplasty, which is what Stephanie was saying. It's crazy to me that people are putting these implants in the back of their ears. I mean, it reminds me of like some people actually get these horns that are placed under the skin for a certain type of look, I guess. And then there is, of course, elf ear surgery. So, I think I personally don't like to create any type of appearances that don't exist in nature. So to me, something that's just sitting there on the back of the ear, making the ear stick out more is kind of a strange approach. But, you know, that's the beauty they're seeking. Then I guess that's how you accomplish it.
That looks so unnatural.
Which is wild to me, considering here in the West, if you have sticky outy ears, it's generally considered a flaw, and people spend good money to have their ears pinned back. Isn't that a shining example of how stupid beauty standards are in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's so subjective, right? I mean, that's what this is all about, is that there's extreme subjectivity in this, and yet there is still this one sort of ideal look that, you know, at least K-pop stars are aiming for. But I think there's a similar look that even, you know, us in the West are trying to achieve. But there are, of course, these differences as well, and sometimes almost like complete opposite.
Like in one country, we're paying plastic surgeons to pin our ears back, and in another country, we're paying plastic surgeons to make our ears stick out. Humans are weird. But the strangest beauty standard of all in this realm is that of the infantile aesthetic. Again, I'm going to hand over to June Journey here because she will explain this better than me.
This influencer went absolutely viral for being very cute, and as you can see, this baby face trend basically revolves around having a very small face and very supposedly juvenile features. The key features of this aesthetic include a high cranial top, elf-shaped ears, aegyo-style eye bags, a short mid-face and philtrum, M-shaped lips, babyish teeth, and many, many more.
Now, this might sound strange to you, and rightly so. The most depressing part is that even if you are one of the girls who's lucky enough to make it as an idol and manage to alter yourself enough to fit the ever more toxic beauty standard, sure, you might achieve physical perfection, but it doesn't mean you're going to achieve happiness. Take a look at Sully. She was a South Korean singer, actress, and model who gained fame as a member of the K-pop girl group FX. When you look at Sully's life as a whole, the poor girl didn't really stand a chance. Thrust into the entertainment industry at the age of 11 with the drama Ballad of Seongdong. Oh god. Seodong. I probably butchered that. She was then forced to join SM Entertainment as a trainee in 2005, aka a child pop star factory. There, she trained exclusively before debuting as an idol. Unfortunately for Sully, this is probably where the majority of her issues began, because SM Entertainment just so happens to be one of the most controversial, dangerous child star factories. SM Entertainment has a chilling reputation for scouting children, some barely older than 9, and thrusting them into the brutal, unforgiving idol trainee scheme. And this relentless pressure to mold your face and body through invasive surgeries, all in pursuit of SM's impossible beauty standards. And that is all in the name of creating the perfect K-pop idol. Even darker are the infamous slave contracts. These contracts are designed to trap idols in lengthy, suffocating agreements, leaving the idols paid pennies while the company makes millions of them.
Well, I think we do the same thing here in the US with our artists in many cases, right? So there's always going to be people who are looking to take advantage of others, unfortunately. But I think, you know, trying to have people look as young as what they were showing and then projecting that as like, you know, the beauty standard, but also having them appear so young is almost like some, you know, twisted perversion there, right? Not really sure if it's, you know, who it's meant to please, but again, just lots of problems there. The more I learn about what's going on with you know, the K-pop beauty world, the more repulsed I'm getting, honestly.
Was it really any wonder then that Sully decided to rebel? I mean, you can only keep up the pretense of being the perfect pop idol princess before the pressure mounts up and you start to crack. And in a K-pop world built on perfection and conformity and silence, Sully dared to become the ultimate rebel, and she paid the ultimate price. Refusing to bow to the suffocating beauty standards and ruthless expectations of SM Entertainment and K-pop fans alike, she spoke up against Korea's carefully constructed idol illusion. She would post candid Instagram pictures, she would speak about her feminist views, and she was unapologetically honest about her body and her personal life. Sully openly defied an industry and standard that wanted to keep her silent and submissive. And instead of being supported, Sully was instead met with an avalanche of online hate, malicious gossip, and public backlash, painting her as the problematic idol who refused to play by the rules. Unsurprisingly, eventually the pressure became too much operation, Sully was found unalive at the age of just 25.
Singer and actress Sully, a former member of the K-pop girl band FX, was found dead Monday afternoon.
I mean, that's what happens when you speak out, against a large force. We've seen that not just in the K-pop world, but in, other realms as well, including politics in this country. So, I'm not terribly surprised by this, but it's very sad, like you have to either conform and follow the rules that are set by the, higher ups, or potentially face the consequences if you want to stay in the game. So that's just sad reality, across different sectors in different countries.
Police said in a statement that the 25-year-old had been suffering from severe depression and how for now they suspect she may have taken her own life.
Yeah, I mean, there's no room for mental health, in all of this, unfortunately, when there should be. But, people just, are go, trying to attain some unrealistic standards and make, I guess, a lot of money. That's what they're hoping to do. And, they want to be famous. And unfortunately, sometimes mental health will suffer, especially if deep down you have a lot of issues with how things are being done. But then again, they own you and you need to, again, conform and submit to it, or you'll essentially be pushed out or pushed to the brink of having a mental breakdown, which I guess is what happened to this unfortunate person.
K-pop is a genre so global that even women who aren't East Asian at all are trying to change their appearance to appear more Korean. These women identify as being Korean, and they are trying to transform themselves into being replicas of their favorite K-pop idols, like the influencer Lisa Yo. Lisa is an Austrian fashion influencer who posts content about her life, Korea, K-beauty, and fashion. But this is what Lisa looks like now after a long and extensive quest to appear more Korean.
Initially an Austrian-Mongolian woman with mixed features, Lisa decided to get plastic surgery to supposedly look more Korean, resulting in her, looking like this. Yeah, I think we can all agree that Lisa doesn't exactly look like a typical Korean.
And this, again, is a perfect example of just trying to look like yourself, maybe with some degree of enhancement, with plastic surgery, versus trying to transform yourself into a completely different person. Because when you do that, problems happen, aesthetic problems, functional problems. And it seems like this person is probably facing that already.
If you look at her comment section, there are many people praising her looks, and there are even TikTok tutorials on what cosmetic procedures to get to look just like her.
And Lisa isn't the only one undergoing various surgeries in order to emulate her favorite K-pop idol. The pursuit has become so popular that South Korea has actually become the global mecca for plastic surgery tourism. Yes, that's the thing. In Seoul especially, the surgeons have become internationally famous for their cutting-edge techniques, competitive prices, and the allure of flying home looking like the perfect K-pop idol.
If and when they have complications from traveling abroad for plastic surgery, who's going to deal with those? It's going to be local doctors, and it might be very difficult to undo, reverse, correct some of the procedures that are done abroad. So that is always going to be one of those risks of medical tourism. And then the costs as well. I mean, the costs can mount because you've gotten cosmetic work done elsewhere. So your insurance company is probably not going to pay for the correction of that cosmetic work, or they may not. And then you're going to be stuck with big bills, and corrective and revision cosmetic plastic surgery is typically more expensive than the actual primary initial surgeries.
And look, I am not judging these people for going to South Korea for plastic surgery. I mean, the logic is there, but if you're traveling to South Korea for plastic surgery, prepare to die. Not really, but also kind of. Along with the K-pop boom and the desperation for the perfect face came the rise in ghost doctors. Sounds spooky, right? And it is. Spying an opportunity to cash in on the booming plastic surgery industry and the desire to look like the perfect K-pop princess, some savvy but very unethical surgeons have set up clinics that churn through their victims, patients, like an assembly line. Unsuspecting patients who believe that the surgeon that they met during their consultation will also be the surgeon who will be doing their surgery have spoken up of waking up to find that their surgeon had vanished and was in fact replaced with an underqualified stand-in who is rushing through the surgeries in order to move along the assembly line of humans.
And the same thing happens in places like Turkey, especially when it comes to hair surgery or other types of cosmetic surgery. And people wonder why spend more in, the US, let's say. Why not just travel abroad, get these procedures done. I've seen the before and afters on the websites. I know they're great. Well, because, you don't really have a lot of recourse when you have one of these ghost doctors doing your surgery. If you do have a complication, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to file a complaint in that country? Who's going to care to take that case on when the actual governments are sanctioning essentially these cosmetic clinics because they're making money off of that? Some portion of the profits from these clinics are, going straight to the government. So that's, I think, a hugely problematic thing that people don't think about. People don't think about the risks of surgery. I mean, we talk about that extensively on this channel for all types of procedures, but I recently put out a video about facelift complications and risks if you want to check that out. But, people don't want to even know about that. They just want to, think that everything's going to be perfect. They're going to be beautiful. Everything's going to be great. They're going to go abroad, save money. But then they don't come back, or they come back and they have issues and no one to blame, no one to take responsibility. They try to call the clinic where they went, no one picks up. They call around locally to see who can help, and people say, like me, we sometimes get phone calls from folks who went abroad for their procedures, and then they want us to fix the problem. Well, we'll help out, but not with some immediate complication that they're having. For that, they have to go to the emergency room. And so it's just far from ideal, but I understand why people choose to travel abroad for their procedures.
This is a tragic story of a young man named Dae who lost his life to one of these factory-style plastic surgery clinics. So this is 25-year-old Kwon Tae-hee. This is the last photo he took and sent it to his friends right before surgery. You could see that he was smiling and he was excited to see his new face. He followed all protocols. He came to the clinic and went under the hospital at 12:30 p.m. But 11 hours later, at 11:27 p.m., the plastic surgery clinic would call 911 or 119 in Korea, seeking for emergency help for one of their patients. And in the call, the nurse explains that the patient is okay, but wants to transfer to the hospital due to heavy bleeding. Now it's September 9th, 5 a.m. Dae's mother would get a message from his eldest son saying that Dae, their youngest son, is at the hospital in critical condition. Of course, Dae's mother being shocked. Here is a video of her pleading for Dae's life.
아이고, 조금만 참아. 아이고, 우리 집 보배. 조금만 참아.
Imagine seeing your loved ones having machines to keep you alive. Dae was in critical condition for about a month in the hospital, but he ended up passing away.
People don't think about the toll that that this takes on the family, on one's family, one's loved ones, like this poor mother. I mean, at least if he was at a local hospital to close to where they lived, she could have visited more often. Instead, people have to fly to the other side of the world to see their loved one who's injured and hurt and dying in the hospital. I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy, because I think if people truly understood the real risks involved with cosmetic plastic surgery, A, they probably wouldn't get it as often, and B, they probably would think not just twice about traveling far from home to get this done. And I don't know, maybe people wake up to this and maybe they won't.
20 minutes into the surgery, we see Dr. J. This is the main head doctor. 1 hour after cutting through the jawbones, the main Dr. J leaves the surgery room without stitching the patient back up. Then a mystery man in surgery clothing comes into the room. We now know and call them ghost doctors or shadow doctors. This doctor is nowhere in the records of the surgery. We don't know his name, his face, literally a ghost doctor. And later we find out this was a ghost doctor that only had his license for about 6 months.
So essentially they're trainees. Maybe they just recently finished up their residency and this is like a fellowship for them. Maybe they already finished fellowship, but this is like a first job, out of their training. But regardless, it's extremely unethical for patients to undergo surgery with these ghost doctors when they've paid for and have consulted with, the head doctor. That's who they deserve to be operated on, not with someone completely different. It's fine to have a junior doctor in your clinic and, maybe lower the price and have people book with them if they're interested in paying less than like the fees for the head doctor. But that needs to be, clearly stated and outlined. And for surgery done under local anesthesia, it's maybe, a little bit more comforting because, you you'll likely be mostly awake, for the procedure. But for cases like this, jawbone reduction, more invasive procedure, rhinoplasty, where you're going to be completely under anesthesia for hours and hours, you have to really wonder, who's actually performing your surgery and how safely is it being done. In this video, I'll be reacting to Miss K Drama's video on Korean actors who ruin their face with too much plastic surgery.
With the strong competition in Korean drama entertainment, some actors feel the need to improve their appearances at all costs to stay ahead or at least maintain
my finger.
Their youthful looks. But sometimes these changes turn out to be something that could ruin themselves or their career. Kwang Kwang-hee is one of the celebrities who has been open about the surgeries that he's done for himself.
Okay, yeah, we don't have too many of those people in the United States who are open to sharing their plastic surgery journeys. So that's cool that this guy did.
With him being open and proud about it, Kwang-hee even became a spokesmodel for a plastic surgery clinic back in 2014.
Yeah, some people become these like spokespeople, and they get perks obviously from the clinics, where they had their surgeries, usually get discounted prices, whatever. Personally, I don't really like working with like influencers. I did at some point. I grew not to enjoy that type of relationship because sometimes like you can't always predict how the surgery is going to go, A, B, if they're going to be happy or not, and then C, like what exactly the deliverables are, and trying to push someone to share a story on their Instagram when maybe they're just not in the mood to share because they're still recovering from their procedures, it just doesn't feel comfortable.
Kwang-hee first debuted as an idol in the boy group called Dae, or also known as Children of Empire, back in 2010.
Well, I don't know who they are, but I do know BTS. And I do like BTS.
During an episode of KBS's Hello Counselor, Kwang-hee said he felt physically inadequate because of his beak-shaped nose and his eyes being too close together. He went on to say that even if he got plastic surgery, he would still feel below the rest of the members in the sense that they were all born with naturally handsome looks and he was not.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic of getting plastic surgery to look closer to what you have envisioned, but then once you're there, you still feel inadequate because you feel like it's maybe fake or that you're fooling people, almost like having like an imposter syndrome of entering, some place where you just feel inferior to the people around you.
Kwang-hee then started off by revealing that he had inserted silicone into his forehead, chin, and nose, and at the same time got dental veneers. In fact, Kwang-hee wanted to make his nose higher, but his doctor mentioned that he could pass away if he continues to do so. So to answer the question, the only part of Kwang-hee's face that wasn't touched by a plastic surgeon are his cheekbones.
It's impressive how open he is about all of these procedures, considering that he seems, just very bothered by having had certain facial features that were different from the rest of his band members. Yeah, and he's at least telling people all that he's had, and I think it's good to have that level of transparency.
Recently, Kwang-hee revealed that he underwent another procedure and got Botox, which unfortunately didn't turn out well. In an episode of Radio Star, Kim Gu-ra first noticed Kwang-hee.
There is an actual clinical diagnosis of body dysmorphic disorder, and for those individuals, no matter how many procedures they have, they'll never feel complete or satisfied. And that might be something that this particular Korean actor might be going through because he's getting many procedures that he knows they have like potential consequences, and no matter how many procedures he gets, he seems still dissatisfied with his appearance.
Kwang-hee, who confessed to having a hard time moving his mouth due to Botox, actress Yoon Eun-hae lost her natural acting and looked stiff and awkward after undergoing plastic surgery. Eun-hae was once named the first Love actress.
So the way that could happen is if Botox is placed into areas where filler is supposed to be placed, if you're looking for augmentation around the mouth area, then you could get a weakening of your lip area. The smile can be off because some people actually confuse Botox with filler on the patient side and unfortunately on the provider side. So always know who you're going to see. Make sure that they have the right credentials and the right background to be able to properly treat you.
Various other similarities with other collections. Meanwhile, Yoon Eun-hae maintained that the alleged resemblances were all coincidences, and even went as far as to accuse the Korean designer of using her for clout to draw attention to his new collection.
Yeah, it seems like there was a lot more going on maybe with the fashion stuff, more so than just the plastic surgery leading to her changes of, acting and how she portrayed herself in different roles.
For getting embroiled in the scandal, Eunhae went on a hiatus, and it wasn't until 2017 that she was able to come back, but still couldn't regain the love and attention of the audience she once had before. Besides, undergoing lots of plastic surgery destroyed her pure beauty. After being called a plastic surgery disaster, Yoon Eunhae's face has recovered a lot, but still can't act as naturally as before.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between getting surgery that then makes you look prettier, more attractive, more youthful, and going overboard. And one thing that concerns me is when especially younger people are looking to change many different attributes of who they are. So it's one thing if you don't like some component of your nose and you're looking for a slight tweak, like that's one thing, or your hairline has receded and you're looking to restore it. But when you're looking to completely change many features of who you are, that can come as a shock to not just yourself when you recover, but also to many other people. Plastic surgery should enhance your look to the best of its ability rather than completely change your look and for you to look like someone that you're not, So that's where people can get into trouble.
Double eyelid surgery in junior high so she could be prettier and get her nose done as well since it was crooked. But when you look at her before and after images, it's natural to think that she's done more plastic surgery than the two already mentioned procedures.
Yeah, that's another common trend that we also see here, where there'll be some mention of plastic surgery, like the actress or actor might give away that, oh yeah, I had a rhinoplasty. And so then everyone says, oh, okay, yeah, you see they did have plastic surgery, and they basically leave them alone, right? So they then don't go into all the details of maybe some additional procedures, which sometimes can be a full long list of other procedures that were done at the same time or before the rhinoplasty or after the rhinoplasty. So it's very common to offer just enough for people to leave you alone and then not actually reveal the honest truth.
When Min Young starred in the 2022 drama Love and Contract, instead of her iconic, sweet, and youthful visuals, she looked rather strange, stiff, and unnatural. Her cheekbones and chin became more visible compared to her previous drama like Healer. One netizen even shared the thought of contemplating whether or not to watch her drama Healer, since the amount of plastic surgery she has done after the show is quite troublesome.
Does getting plastic surgery change the way that we can actually function and the way that our face moves? And I think the answer to that many times is yes, it can. And for example, even something like Botox, there are many studios or for example live Broadway shows that don't allow their actors and actresses to have Botox in, say, their forehead because it limits the types of expressions that they can produce. And so that is definitely something interesting to think about.
Due to this, speculations arise that the actress could possibly have undergone the surgery of shaving her jawline. When we look at her before and after images,
that is such a common surgery in Korea, to slim out the lower face, doing this kind of V-line surgery. We've talked about it many times on the channel.
We can observe the substantial modification of her jawline. In her earlier photos, her jawline appears more squarish and smooth, but in her recent photos and appearance, her jawline is more defined and triangular. But could her jawline transformation be the result of weight reduction? Well, we can't rule out that option. She even made a buzz after posting a photo on her Instagram account.
It's interesting that even across many different cultures, and if you look at some of the models we have here, and this Korean actress is starting to look very similar to our actors and actresses that we have here, with this V-shaped face and the really big prominent cheeks. And that's just sort of the look, right? Even though she's coming from a different place, different culture, but the ultimate look is it ends up being quite similar.
But eventually took down the photo immediately as people...
But I think there's something special about people maintaining certain beauty elements from wherever they're from and potentially amplifying them, but not trying to necessarily change them completely or conform to some ideal universal standard that isn't really real, but is something that we have sort of made up. There was recently an FDA warning about some of this machinery because, people were getting too much fat melted away. They were getting scars on their face. As a double board certified facial plastic surgeon, I'll be reacting to this video by Jushika. It's called $8,000 Extreme Glow Up in Korea.
I flew all the way to Korea to get an insane glow up. So I will be getting the full glow up that's going to cost $8,000. Yes, I know it's a lot of money, but just watch, guys, because it's all going to worth it. So are you guys ready? Let's start the glow up.
Glow up. $8,000. I still have not been to South Korea. People say I should check it out and that they have a lot of plastic surgery going on there. That I know, but yeah, one day I guess I'll get a chance to visit.
Guys, I'm so sad because apparently I can't part my hair because my hair has been bleached.
I have to comment here that frequent perming and bleaching of one's hair can definitely weaken it over time. So you have to be careful with these types of treatments to your hair.
So apparently my hair is gonna all melt if I perm my hair on top of bleach hair. Why did no one tell me about this before? But anyways, I don't know what to do. I don't want to dye my hair now, so I might dye my hair. This kind of red, I think it's a really pretty color. So I was gonna do like really natural red, I guess, because it's slightly brown right now. And then haircut. I'm so sad.
Come on, cheer up over here. This is a long appointment. I don't know. We're like almost 2 minutes into this 9-minute video. Let's see what else comes up here. Where's the plastic surgery? She can't get over it.
예전에는 맨날 약간 좀 머리 길이도 조금 짧게 하고 히메 커트기 많이 했었거든요. 아 진짜요? 네, 근데 요거는 약간 여성스럽게 그냥 스타일을 좀 바꾸고 싶어서.
Okay, professional makeup. Let's see how this goes. Oh, I remember seeing the cherry blossoms in Japan that were also equally amazing. If you haven't seen my video about my experience in Japan with my dad, please make sure to check out that one. I don't have much to say here. You know, guys don't have to go through all this as often. I know some men wear makeup, and including in Korea. I hear that that's popular over there, but I don't know. I have to say, like, I feel like it's a lot of time and energy to do this, especially on a daily basis. So I don't envy women for usually being the ones to do more makeup. You know, take my hat off to them. Profile picture. Okay. Is this just for headshots? I don't know. We're like almost halfway through the video. I'm glad she's happy. She didn't get the perm, but she got the makeup she wanted, so that's good. Yeah, this is the thing, you know, you have to realize that most pictures that are getting out there for models and for many celebrities are edited. You know, they're edited pictures. So, you know, sometimes it's like someone will get a plastic surgery and then they'll post pictures, and it's like, if it's edited, how do you know like what came from the actual procedure and what was because the image was edited, right? And these days with AI, even if you're not very good at Photoshop, it's not that hard to put it through one of these AI editing softwares. So it's tricky, especially for, you know, being able to evaluate honest before and after photos from plastic surgery, right? Because if you're gonna spend money and, you know, entrust someone with doing your procedure, you want to feel like, you know, at least images in their gallery or on their Instagram are honest, right? So I think that's where, you know, it's helpful to have video content for people to review, not just photos, you know, testimonials from real people. But, you know, it's very difficult as a consumer to truly know like what's real, what's not real. But I think you can tell which clinics are putting a lot of effort into displaying honest before and after results that really show like what the surgery did, rather than what just like makeup did or some powder in the hair or, you know, some editing apps, right? So you got to be careful out there. And the same goes for when you see, you know, a favorite celebrity maybe posting an image, you know, and maybe they look so perfect, everything is perfect. Just realize that chances are in real life they don't look quite like that. Sometimes it's a trick of makeup, sometimes it's really just their team editing the actual image. We know a lot of celebrities have been caught doing that when they haven't been too honest about it, but just kind of assume that that is the standard. So if you're looking at a magazine, you see someone, they look perfect, it's probably not completely real or honest, but just something to be aware of. You know, there's something artificial in perfection. Humans are meant to be imperfect. I remember hearing a story once about, you know, back in the day, I think it was like in Italy or something, where, you know, there was a master craftsman who would make tables. And if a table ever turned out too perfect looking, he would discard it, which is like crazy to think about, right? But the reason was because it didn't kind of feel as natural to him, and it didn't seem like something that was really authentic. So yeah, and now we have all these machines that make, you know, perfect cuts and everything is perfect, and these editing softwares that, you know, give this kind of perfect appearance. But, you know, humans are not that. So I think we've maybe swayed a little bit too far in that direction of seeking perfection, when in reality it's not, I think, the goal of plastic surgery or any other kind of aesthetic type of interventions. I think the goal should be to appear natural and to feel good about your appearance rather than seeking perfection.
Feel like falling deeper, colder nights 난 너무 싫어. 기다리기에는 너무
Burning fat in mode.
줬던 내 사랑이 식어.
So it looks like the system here might be applying some radio frequency, maybe even with microneedling. And there was recently an FDA warning about some of this machinery because, you know, people were getting too much fat melted away. They were getting scars on their face, scar tissue building up inside, you know, underneath the skin surface. So these procedures are not without risk. And sometimes in a med spa where it seems so, you know, so innocent and so safe, right? But in reality, it matters who your provider is. And I think it's always best to go to someone with the most experience in these devices, who has a degree that they need to defend each and every time they perform this type of work, instead of, you know, someone with less experience who is not necessarily qualified to do it. So very important who you see for these less invasive procedures that can still have real risk.
하는 것도 난 힘들어. No, I can't, just can't. 가져 내 맘을.
So now she's getting injections of this Regerin, which is essentially regenerative skin treatment that's made from purified salmon DNA. This is something that's not approved by the FDA in the US for injectable means, but is something that some people are applying topically, and then they might use radiofrequency and or microneedling to try to deliver it deeper into the skin. And it's meant to improve skin quality, elasticity, hydration. There are, of course, other things that can do this, but this is one of these newer types of treatments coming out of Korea. You see, she's saying that it hurts a lot. These injectables can sometimes hurt, they're going, into the skin. And I don't know how much numbing she got beforehand, but sometimes the acidity of the injectable can be what leads to some discomfort. Sometimes it's also the temperature of what it is that you're injecting. If something is a little too cold, it can sometimes hurt more. The size of the needle, the speed of injection can all lead to various degrees of pain.
Wow. 진짜 아팠네.
Let's see. So Jushika's procedure Rex, InMode, Regeron, and Potenza, which is another radiofrequency device, and chemical peeling, which again, there are various forms of chemical peels, and we've covered that at length in different videos in the past, but there's more superficial peeling that can be effective and is less risky. And then there's, of course, deep peels that penetrate deeper into the layers of skin. And while they can rejuvenate your skin to a greater extent, they also carry more risk. And sometimes the risk can even be systemic, like effects on your heart, for example. So it needs to be performed, again, in very experienced hands and with proper monitoring. So I don't know where the plastic surgery segment is. I'm hoping it comes soon because we're now almost at 6 minutes. So remember, a lot of times you're seeing these like immediate outcomes, right? But it's important to see how the skin fares over time. And if this type of treatment truly leads to a better outcome than, more basic like moisturizing of the skin or retinols or just proper hydration of the skin, it's like you have to consider the basics and how much more these more expensive treatments are giving you to see if they're truly worthwhile. But when we see results, we're often seeing them immediately after, especially with filler, or like the day after. And yeah, you might see a result at that stage, but are the results sustained? Because it might not be sustainable for people to get these treatments done all the time. And then if you're in constant pain from them, you have to, think to yourself, is it worth it?
Have you guys been enjoying my glow up so far? Well, we have a really big glow up left. It's plastic surgery. I am going to post a vlog about my plastic surgery.
Oh, she wrote here ptosis. Okay. Remember, ptosis is when you have a droopy upper eyelid, and it's often corrected by strengthening some of the connective tissues in the eyelid. So we'll see what exactly she had done.
I've been having issue with this eye. So I talk more about why I'm gonna get it done and all the behind the story. Go watch that if you are interested. But yeah, let's get plastic surgery! That's kind of insane. Who would have thought that they were going to get plastic surgery for the glow up video? Because a lot of the influencers usually just do their hair, their skin, get their makeup done, look pretty. But for me, I'm actually going like full on, hoping that it's gonna look better than how my eyes look now. Let's go get the surgery.
So it looks here like they operated on both upper eyelids, not just on her left. So it could be that she had an upper bleph bilaterally and then the ptosis adjusted, or sometimes when you're doing a ptosis repair, you actually need to work on both eyelids because as you adjust one eyelid, now you have some discrepancy with the other one, so you might need to go there and adjust it as well. So it could be that she had a bilateral ptosis repair with or without some upper eyelid skin being removed as well.
Guys, I'm here to get my nails done. So this is my nail condition right now. Looking really wretched. I've been kind of like biting my nails too, which is like a really bad habit of mine. So I'm gonna get my nails done today for the glow up challenge. And here's my nail artist. I've been coming here for like the past 2 years. She does an amazing job. So this is the design that I chose.
Yeah, like she said, she's been biting her nails, and sometimes that stems from, anxiety. Sometimes it's just a habit that we get into. And it's always about prevention, right? With all of these types of, beauty kind of elements. If we can prevent hair loss, that's great. Then you don't need super expensive procedures to restore it. If we can prevent, our nails from, getting partially injured or looking less than ideal, then that's always better. Same thing with skincare, right? Like skincare is great and there's all these things you can do for it, but if you can prevent like sun damage in the first place, that's going to be, extremely important and not just beneficial for the quality of your skin, but from reducing the risk of really bad things like skin cancer. So just a word about, prevention and the importance of it. And there's, things you can do to, treat certain conditions and optimize things later. But if you can prevent it in the first place, that's always going to be the way to go.
I love this like heart that changes shape as you change the angle.
Again, just one of those things that I think most guys don't really think about, and it's one less thing to worry about, which I definitely appreciate as far as personal care goes.
한정판이래요. 한정판이에요? 뭐예요 이게?
Oh my God, my daughter would be so happy if she was given gummies, after anything. So she loves gummies. And these are from Germany. Okay, cool. I was just in Berlin. Very nice.
Oh, apparently one of her German customer gave this her.
약간 넷플릭스에 나온 뭐 한국 부자들 그건데 재밌다.
To know that we're on the same wavelength. Oh yeah, why can't we just meet tomorrow?
Yeah, the truth is to do anything well takes time, right? So when I'm doing lip surgery or hair transplant surgery, it's never a rush type of process. And my patients definitely, I think, appreciate that. And we definitely get people who sometimes wonder, like, how could the surgery take 8 hours, for hair, or 10 hours? But it's like, why would you want me to rush it? I mean, especially for a procedure that, where the result will last ideally your whole life, right? Like with the nails, I guess I'll have to redo them. But again, like she'll be walking around with them for, I don't know, weeks to months, and she wants them to look as good as possible. So you find an artist that can meet those needs, and who cares about the quality of their work. And I think, that's how I approach plastic surgery as well.
I love this, like the middle finger.
I like this K-pop music in the background. It's fun.
This is the magnet. Apparently this is like really trending in Korea right now. Like changes shape as you move it.
Those nails are quite the statement, I gotta say.
Guys, I'm done with the nails. They're so pretty. 진짜 예쁘다. So cute. 근데 막
블링블링.
걸리는 게 없어서 좋은 것 같아.
다 막아놨어.
일상생활 다 가능하니까.
내 말 틀린 건 하나도 없어. 안 될 거란 생각 이제 던져. 너가 없으면 날 okay 난 잘 먹고 잘 살.
I don't know, they look cool. I don't know what else to say about the nails.
맘을 다 부어주긴 좀 그래. 잠을 만큼 참았어 억울해. Baby I can feel it with you. Maybe you feel the same with me too. 매일이 난 네 생각하다 잠들어. My heart is beating for you.
Yeah, but I guess, like, I don't know how long, the makeup will last, right? Because she'll have to remove it maybe that evening. So it would be interesting to see the before and after without any makeup, and to see, what changed. I understand like the makeup part, if you remove it, then there's no makeup. But as far as all the skin treatments that she had, as far as the eyelid surgery, it would be nice to see a kind of bare-faced before and after to really, kind of observe some of those changes. Because when you throw makeup into the mix, it becomes more difficult to detect the results of the rest of the work, right? Anyway, interesting video. Thank you, Jushika, for sharing all this. It's always fun to see, the types of things that people do and how they react to it themselves. That's part of, what I enjoy reacting to. But it seems like she's now quite happy with this glow up, so happy for her. Let's react to this video by Tina Young. It's called I Got Lip Liner Tattoo in Korea. Plump lips without filler.
I flew all the way to Korea to get my lips tattooed. Yes, you heard that right. I'm getting a semi-permanent lip liner tattoo today, and I'm going to show you the entire process, how painful it is on a scale of 1 to 10, and share with you how much it cost.
Yeah, some people come in and they have just like a slight asymmetry on their lip, and they wonder, is it worth doing surgery or some filler, or should I investigate something else? So this is that something else. Tattooing the lip, like a lip blush type of procedure. Let's see how her experience was.
I stumbled across this service on Instagram, and it seems that only in Korea offers this type of lip liner tattoo.
Yeah, that's not true. I mean, these are procedures that are offered all over the world. Korea does a lot of cosmetic work, so maybe it's offered there at a slightly higher frequency than it is in other places, but lip lining tattoo is something that's available in the States and in many other countries around the world.
I've been wanting to get it done for a while, but I've been pregnant. I gave birth, had a baby, and finally I can treat myself and do something for my lips. Now, I love the look of a fuller, youthful lip.
Just looking at Tina's lips, I mean, they're very nice. She has nice balance of volume between the upper lip and her bottom lip. And she overall has a bit of arching to her upper lip, but it's not anything that's overly pronounced. It's a very nice overall shape to her upper vermilion border. And when you look at her red lip all the way out to the oral commissure, you can still continue to see that red lip show. And that is a nice feature to have, because some people, as you get out to the side, the lip rolls in quite a bit. And I think that this type of feature with the lateral lip show is very nice, and it complements her face well. So she does have a filtral distance that looks like a moderate length, and overall has very nice lip anatomy. She also has very nice symmetry, both at the level of the cupid's bow as well as going out laterally too. But when you look at the lip volume, you can notice that the right side of her red lip is a bit fuller than the left side, and we all have some degree of asymmetry in our lips from one side to the other. That's very normal.
I did a bit of research and I kind of weighed up, should I get filler, should I get lip liner? And my decision at the end is to go with lip liner, because with lip filler, you gotta do it constantly and there's a lot of maintenance.
Yeah, each of these modalities has its own pros and cons, right? Some people don't like that with a lip liner tattoo, it's very difficult to completely get rid of it. Even if you get laser removal of that pigment, it doesn't necessarily go away completely. Also, if you get lip filler, and you don't get dissolving, then you can potentially have some migration. And as we talk about in many other videos, and really this has been the talk of a lot of content online over the last few years, that filler also is kind of a more permanent than we were originally told that it was, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But we do have dissolving agents for like HA filler called hyaluronidase, so that can surely help return things in part to how they were before the filler procedure. And then of course it's important to keep in mind lip lift surgery, whether it's a corner lip lift, a bullhorn style lip lift. I do a lot of that in my practice, and these are different types of procedures, and again, each can address certain features of the lips, and each has different goals, right? So if you're looking to shorten the filtral distance significantly, you can't really do that with filler or with lip liner. But if the filtral distance is not an issue for you, then you can surely consider these other less invasive modalities. But also, like say you want to expose more of your upper teeth. Well, neither the filler nor the lip liner tattoo will be able to accomplish that, whereas a lip lift will, right? So it just depends on what you're going for. And I think it's always best to talk to someone who can offer all those different modalities, or at least refer you to the right place if they don't themselves do that type of treatment. But I think it's only fair for patients to give them the full range of what's possible and what might be best for them. Like a lot of times I refer people people out for a lip liner tattoo, even though that's not something we offer in-house. So I think it's important for patients to seek out the proper advice where it's a kind of a non-biased approach to giving recommendations.
Here's what my lips look like before. I like my overall lip shape, but I do feel like my lips are starting to thin out.
As we age, the roll of the lip, which is right at the vermilion border, oftentimes flattens out. So we lose some structure there, some integrity of the tissues, right? As we reduce the collagen and elastin with the aging process. And that's partly what people notice. And sometimes a little bit of hydration from filler can bring that back. Other times something like this with the tattoo can help. But remember that tattoo is not going to give any three-dimensionality. So it doesn't really bring back that roll of the vermilion border. So that's something to keep in mind with the tattoo. But it can surely help with adjusting the shape of the vermilion border as well as some symmetry enhancements if those are needed. And then of course color as well.
Also, I want to shorten the space between my nose and lips, which is called the philtrum.
Remember, one other way to do this with shortening the philtrum, if you're looking for a very modest change, would be with Botox. So you may have heard of lip flip, and that's the use of Botox, usually just a few units at a few key positions along the vermilion border, and that allows a very small amount of elevation of the vermilion. It's usually not a very significant change, maybe maximum like a millimeter of increase. With the tattooing, I think generally the cosmetic tattoos are not done to enhance the upper vermilion by more than 1 to 2 millimeters. But if you're looking for a more significant height increase of the lip and a reduction of the philtrum, that's when you can consider something like a lip lift, or the specific type of lip lift that I offer in my practice called the Ella lift.
When your philtrum is shorter, so the space between your nose and your lips, it's like closer, you tend to look a little bit younger, more youthful. So with lip liner tattoo, you can actually overdraw your Cupid's bow to make that space look shorter so you look younger.
It's kind of like what some people do with makeup, right? They overline the lip to make it look fuller, to make the distance look shorter. And that's something that the lip liner tattoo is essentially imitating.
When I was younger, I would just buy a lot of makeup, cover things up, get creative, and just sort of pack it on.
So the other thing in Tina's case is that she has nice upper tooth show when she opens her mouth and when she smiles. Not everyone has that. So the people who don't have that in a very evident way will sometimes consider the lip lift surgery because that helps expose the upper teeth more. But in Tina's case, since she already has the upper tooth show, she probably doesn't want or need to expose more of the upper teeth. So that's why I think for her to look into this lip liner tattoo makes a lot of sense, because a lip lift will shorten that philtral distance, but it will give her more tooth show, which might work against her aesthetic goals.
My lips are about to be improved. The artist Belle is working on me today. She starts by gently cleansing my lips before applying the numbing cream. Then she covers my lips and lets that sit.
So the covering of the lips with that numbing cream allows it to actually work in a stronger way. It will absorb more and will give her more anesthesia so that she feels the actual tattooing less. And so for like surgery, like our Ella lift lip lift, the difference there is that we actually inject local anesthesia. So like lidocaine, right? We inject it in, and then that provides more intense type of numbing and for a longer period of time because we're actually doing surgery. In this case, or for example, filler, you oftentimes don't need to inject the numbing, but it's nice to apply some on the skin surface. It has the same general agents like lidocaine or betacaine or tetracaine that will allow some degree of numbing to occur. And that of course makes the actual procedure more tolerable.
It did feel a little bit tingly, but not painful, just kind of a buzzy sensation.
And of course, like since it's right on the lips, like some of the stuff inevitably you'll actually lick and swallow, and so you might feel a little bit numb in the throat. So you don't want to be eating right after this. You want to let that numbness completely wear off before you ingest any food or have any drinks, because otherwise you could potentially aspirate some of that, meaning to have the food or the water go down the wrong pipe.
Next, she maps out the shape of my lips, overdrawing them slightly to even the edge out and give my lips a fuller look. I told her I mainly want to make my top lip a little bit bigger.
Yeah, like there's a lot of artistry that goes into this. Just like for the aesthetic surgeries that I do, it's a very artistic process, and so is something like this. So when you're picking someone to, whether it's for lip surgery or for this type of cosmetic tattooing, you have to really do your homework to pick who you believe to be a wonderful artist, not just a good technician. So that's important.
And for my bottom lip, to just give me a more defined shape.
So looking here, it looks like first she marked the midline, which is a good landmark. Then she did the actual columns, or around where the filtral columns would be. And then of course she marked out the neo-vermilion border and how she wants to increase the fullness on one side versus the other side. So as I look at the drawing, what I can see is that the right side is marked out a little bit fuller still than the left, because she starts off with the right side being a bit fuller, and then the markings are somewhat enhancing that side more than the left. So that's a little bit of asymmetry that will persist. And for the bottom lip, it looks like she more or less followed the contour of the red lip and its border. So I don't see too many differences there, but on the upper lip, they're trying to make these few adjustments. So we'll see how that turns out.
Once I'm happy with the outline, Belle mixes up the pigment so that it will match my natural lip color, and then we begin. She uses one of those sponge things that dentists use. You know those ones? I don't know what they're called, but I feel like Bugs Bunny with them in. Now, you're probably wondering, did it hurt? Well, my lips were numb, but I could still feel a little scratchy sensation. It's definitely not 100% painless. I'd give it a 3 out of 10 on the pain scale. Still very tolerable. The most sensitive part for me has to be around the Cupid's bow. Ooh, that was a little bit more prickly.
Yeah, when I'm doing surgery, that central area has generally more blood vessels and nerves there, so it's going to be a bit more sensitive. And the interesting thing is that when I do the hair surgeries that I'm known for as well, the central hairline is also going to be usually the most vascular and also the most challenging to numb. And so it's interesting that she feels a bit more centrally than she does laterally. That's something that we also experience in the hair work that we do, but it's also something visually when I'm doing the lip surgeries, I'm seeing those blood vessels, those nerves, and there's more of them right in the middle. And I think it's has something to do with like the watershed effect, meaning that the vasculature and the nerves generally come in from the sides, but then they cross around the central partition of our face. And so where that happens, where that central crossover occurs, you're essentially getting the nerves and the blood vessels coming in from both sides. And so I think that's why there's just a higher quantity of these structures in that central zone.
Here you can see Belle is shading in my new lip line and blending it downwards towards my natural lip. It didn't take her long to finish the first pass on half my lips, and here you can really see the difference.
And you can see that while the shade is close to her natural pink lip, it's not exactly the same. It's a little bit more orangey, a little bit more of like a brownish orangey coloration compared to her natural. And a lot of people would not be bothered by that. I know some of my patients would be bothered by that. So again, to each his own, or to each her own, but this is something that should be considered as a modality to adjust the actual, red lips and to enhance or make these different modifications. And some people, that's all they need. A lot of people want to avoid anything invasive, and this is an option for, I think, a good chunk of people looking at some lip augmentation or enhancement procedures.
I love how natural it looks. And oh my gosh, she perfectly matched my lip color. Then she moved on to the other side. So this part is known as the first pass.
So look, there's like those little needles from that machine, right? So just keep in mind, that's what's actually introducing this color deeper into the skin.
After that, she applies a numbing gel before doing the second pass. I totally needed that second numbing gel because I could start to feel the needles a little bit more. Still bearable, just more scratchy.
Keep in mind that when we're injecting local anesthesia into the lip, it's going to create some swelling and it's going to start to distort the lip to a degree. And actually, the same thing here, as they're using that machine, they're causing some local trauma that's going to lead to some inflammation in the tissue, and it's going to start to change shape, and there's going to be some areas that are more full than other areas. So it's very important to have those initial markings that you can follow, and you don't want to lose those markings, because as soon as you touch the lip, it's already getting swollen. So you need to kind of stay true to your original markings, because it's very difficult to later make little adjustments while the lip is still swollen, because it's already a distortion of the actual original lip. So that's important to keep in mind for surgery, but also for procedures like this.
As she's tattooing, she's checking all the areas, and if certain parts need a little bit more, she'll do an extra layer there.
And the thing is, you can always come back for more sessions in the future as well. So if the color wasn't perfect, if you want to adjust a little bit more shape, you can always do a little bit more. Now, it's hard to take away, right? As is the case with a lot of different types of cosmetic tattooing, but it is theoretically possible with the use of different lasers. But again, if it's just like to add a little bit more, people can have additional sessions in the future.
Quickly talk about the cost of the lip liner tattoo. They charge 700,000 Korean won. This price also includes a touch-up session, which is usually done 1 to 3 months later, and the results last anywhere from 1 to 3 years, depending on your skin type and also what type of skincare you're using.
Remember, for better or worse, it's not like the results completely go back to the original lip after a few years. You still have some semblance of the cosmetic tattoo even a few years later. It just has sort of faded in coloration by that time.
Once it's healed, the color stays stable and it won't change or fade into any weird tones.
Well, hopefully not, but theoretically it can.
Love to come back for a touch-up session, but I don't think I'll make it back to Korea in the next couple of months. So Belle is going to deepen up my lip liner a little bit and do a more thorough job just to get a better long-lasting result, since she knows I probably won't come back. All right, are you ready for the reveal? Here's what my lips look like right after the session. Wow.
Remember, they're also quite swollen now because of what we talked about. That stimulation of that skin is going to lead to some swelling. So you're just seeing a very full lip, as if she just had lip filler, right? That's why it's always kind of not exactly the most accurate when you see the results of lip filler right after it was done, because they look much more plump than they will even a few days later. So it's the same case here, but obviously this is high quality work when it comes to the lip liner tattoo. But just it's important to remember that it doesn't exactly look like this. Even just even hours later, it might look different. It might look more swollen for a few days after this type of procedure, and then usually 3 to 4 days after the cosmetic tattoo, that swelling is going to start to come down quite a bit.
So juicy. Now there is a little bit of swelling, so the size will go down slightly. But guys, I am obsessed with how they look. It's like my lips, but better.
Again, it just depends on what you're looking for. I think this is a nice change for her. Do I think it's a perfect match of color to her actual lips? No. Is it going to be difficult for someone to tell, whether it's her lip or this type of cosmetic tattooing? Of course it will. Most people have no idea. And then she might wear some makeup anyway, and then it's even harder to tell. So again, this is not for everyone. Just like SMP for the scalp is not for everyone, but it's a great modality that people need to know about so that they can decide if it is maybe right for them.
She told me to avoid hot and spicy food for the next 4 hours. Just 4 hours. I was kind of shocked.
Because the hot and spicy foods are going to potentially lead to a little bit of bleeding. Theoretically, that's possible here. And also more swelling, right? So she's trying to cut down on that for Tina.
I'm done with my lip liner tattoo. I'm looking a bit crazy because there is a little bit more swelling. So my lips look extra plump. How good is the color? I love it. All up, it took around 2 hours to do because we were filming, so it was a little bit longer. But yeah, pain-wise, it started off as maybe like a 3 out of 10. And then as she did the layers, it kind of crept up to about a 5, but totally bearable. In the following days, I noticed the color deepening along the lip line. Totally normal and a part of the healing process. I just kept applying the lip balm as instructed. I also noticed that my lips started to peel slightly, but it wasn't anything dramatic.
Remember, the skin got traumatized, right, by this procedure. And that's, the case with any procedure on the face. And so it takes time to heal up from that. The skin is going to get a bit more red. It's going to start to peel potentially, like in her case. But eventually that process process improves, and in a week or two she'll be able to apply her usual makeup routine, and the area takes some time to heal. You know, even though it's not surgery, it's still a real procedure that's penetrating into the skin, and you know, even things like infection are possible. You can get viral reactivation, like a herpetic outbreak, from this type of procedure, just like you can from filler or from something like a lip lift. And so it's not a completely benign procedure, so it's important to know those risks as well when considering undergoing something like this.
I can feel my lips start to dry up a little bit, but it's not too bad. It just feels a little bit chapped.
See, 5 days out now, that swelling is significantly better. Usually you get that peak around 3 days, and we talk about this in our lip lift recovery video. Same thing with any real procedure on the lips, is that you're going to see a peak around day 3, and then it's going to start to come down from there.
Here's what my lips look like now, fully healed. They look so natural, and it's such a subtle tweak.
Yeah, I mean, the color of that tattoo is very similar to her natural lip, so she has a lot to be happy about here. And notice how that right side is still her fuller side, but that's again true to her natural asymmetry. So maybe that's why they wanted to maintain that with the actual cosmetic tattoo.
I only have a little of lip balm on, and this is the natural color. The results look really natural. The only thing that I notice is here where the tattoo lip liner kind of stops. There's a bit of a disconnect if I open my mouth, but not a huge issue because only I can see that.
And again, that's something that can be adjusted with the touch-up procedure. But I think she's had a really nice outcome. Let's see what she says here at the end.
I feel like this is a great alternative if you want fuller looking lips and you don't want to head down the filler direction.
Yeah, if you don't want to head down the filler direction or the lip lift direction, then I think this is a really nice alternative. So I'm glad that Tina made this video. I think it's great to see. It's great to see her happy and a really nice result for her. So that always makes me happy, you know? So thank you, Tina, for sharing your journey. And hopefully the commentary here helped some of you figure out your options. Let's react to Mina's video called The Crazy World of Korea's Plastic Surgery Industry. As a double board certified facial plastic surgeon, I hope that my commentary will be helpful here.
Hello, my beautiful doves. As some of you may have guessed, I am Asian American. Surprise! And like many Asian Americans, I went through a phase where I just about worshipped the K-pop industry. For me, this phase took place during sophomore, junior year of high school, to the point where I would wake up at 4 a.m. before class started just so that I could watch my favorite groups performing on Mnet because, you know, the time difference. This was also the first time that I discovered the Korean beauty industry because K-pop and beauty go hand in hand. Idols are constantly promoting products, doing product placements. Most idols also got plastic surgery, and this was something I was really shocked by at the time because in America, if a pop star got plastic surgery, it was like a major talking point, derogatory. People are really mean about it, so a lot of stars try to hide the fact that they got procedures. But in Korea, it's very blatant. You can easily find before photos of every single idol, and there's just not a lot of stigma. People actually praise the results when they're good. At the time, I was in awe of these surgical transformations. I truly believed that every idol looked so much better post-plastic surgery. And as a result, I became obsessed with what kind of work I would get done when I finally got the disposable income to fly to Korea and pay for my new face.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes I feel like risk isn't something that's discussed enough, right? I released a video not that long ago about the risks and complications of facelift surgery. And to my chagrin, there were people who were posting in comments like, oh, he's just, you know, he's not telling the truth. He's just fear-mongering. This isn't true. It doesn't exist. To me, that's crazy. I was giving statistics based on the literature. This is not like an opinion of mine. This is just that, you know, invasive surgery has real risk. So that is just a fact. And so people need to, I think, understand those risks and complications better before they make these types of decisions about altering their face. Also, of course, this brings up a great point of us growing into our faces and thinking through, like, what does our appearance mean to us? And that's something that morphs and changes. And, you know, it's not like we think of ourselves the same way way when we're 16 versus when we're 26 or 36 or 46. And there are definitely plenty of cases where people had surgery when they were young and then later on they regretted it. Or some people don't have any procedures when they're younger, and even though they've considered them, and then when they're older they realize, oh, thank God I didn't go through that. So I'm not here to tell you to do a surgery or not do a surgery, but think it through and take your time and just realize that you 10 years from now may feel very differently from you now.
Like, this was so locked into my future plans. Obviously, over time, the plans have changed, and I started becoming really upset with what the plastic surgery industry has done to us as a society on a global scale. In terms of the Korean surgery industry, I became much more informed about the oppression that dark-skinned or mixed Koreans experience, as well as the experiences of other demographics of Asians who are affected by Korea's soft power. Like, as a Vietnamese woman, it really disturbs me how looking Korean has become an aspiration for some of my community. Meanwhile, looking Vietnamese or looking Southeast Asian is often weaponized as an insult by East Asians.
Also, with a lot of these different procedures that are being performed, people are starting to look more and more alike. So you start to lose some of those unique attributes of being, like she said, Vietnamese or from anywhere else. I mean, everyone starts to kind of conform to a very similar look because it's the same type of surgeries that are being done on the faces. And so that tends to bring everyone closer to a common denominator. And I think we start to lose some of that uniqueness and that unique identity and what makes each of us special. In pop culture, especially in the traditional type, meaning like what we see on TV and like the biggest stars, right? Whether it's music or TV or anything like that, we're really often shown like one type of person. And maybe on like TikTok, we see all types of people succeeding with different types of looks, with different types of maybe even handicaps, but we still see like the A-listers kind of looking a certain standard way. And that unfortunately drives a lot of people to try to emulate the appearance of these individuals. And I don't think that's great. So I hope more and more that people can build up their reputations and their celebrity having all types of looks, all types of colors, all types of shapes, abilities, disabilities, genders, all that kind of stuff. I think can be a beautiful thing, and you can find your circles that way, and you can build up a nice community. So maybe we'll move away from like the true A-listers eventually, but that might take some time.
I also watched shows like Singles Inferno, which is a Korean dating show, and the first season was very controversial because some of the male contestants would say, literally point blank to the camera, that they liked a girl purely because she had pale skin, like nothing about her personality. All's to say that there's a lot going on in the Korean beauty industry, and I found that over time, it's just gotten more and more powerful, especially on a global scale. So I want to talk about it.
Off to Korea!
Today, I'm getting double eyelid surgery,
lip filler and Botox,
liposuction.
One of the fastest growing sectors in the travel industry, medical tourism.
General thoughts about medical tourism. There was just recently a gentleman who passed after a hair transplant in Turkey. That has also become a very common destination for not just hair surgery, but all types of cosmetic procedures. It's not to say that things like that don't happen in every country, right? Bad outcomes, unfortunate, deaths from cosmetic work. That happens everywhere, unfortunately. But it's just to say that like traveling to any place, anytime you go far from home, different things can happen. And if you don't have your support system there with you, if you don't really know anything about the hospital system that you're going to, or you just can't have someone locally there vouch for you, if you are in trouble, it can be a lot more complicated with recovery. It really doesn't matter if you're somewhere, let's say you're Korean flying to the US for surgery, or from, let's say you're going from the UK over to India for surgery. It really doesn't matter where you're traveling to, but just keep in mind that each place is different, the way things are run. And if you don't know that place you're traveling to well, it could potentially lead to some problems if your procedures don't go perfectly as planned. And you never know how it's going to go, right? Especially when it's more invasive surgery.
So first, I feel like we need to discuss what the beauty standards even are in Korea. There are many, but I would pin it down to big eyes and double eyelids, thinness, high nasal bridges, a V-line jaw, and pale skin. There is an emphasis on looking glowy and youthful, hence why aegyasol, the small puff of skin found under the eyes, is often highlighted as well, as this feature apparently adds a youthful charm to the face. These standards are also pretty unisex. While I think there are some crossover ideals, like the big eyes and the thin bodies, overall, Korean beauty standards are pretty distinct from Western beauty standards. And that's why I find it extremely irritating whenever I hear Americans saying things like, oh, everyone in Asia just wants to look white. In actuality, the favoring of white skin in Korea, white in quotes, predates Western colonization. It doesn't refer to race, it refers to the paleness associated with being high class during the Gojoseon period, which ended in 108 BCE. The belief was that the white skin suggested a labor-free life away from the sun.
It's a good point. Yeah, something that I think I also forget sometimes, but I think, yeah, well said. That's been a long time coming, and it has nothing to do with the Western way of thinking. So I think, good point.
Similarly, regarding double eyelids, Elise Hu notes in her book Flawless that it's actually East Asian movie stars with this feature who are considered the ideal. She writes, in East Asia, the double-eyelided Hwang Shin-hye, not Meg Ryan, had the most sought-after face. No offense to the beautiful Meg Ryan, of course.
We have a video on Meg Ryan's facial transformation if you want to check that out.
She also reports that of the hundreds of people she talked to for her book, not a single person said the motivation for plastic surgery in Korea is to look more European. Furthermore, anthropologists and scholars have uniformly found that the importance of local cultural dynamics trumps outside influences when it comes to health and beauty norms. Well, yes, there are some traces of European beauty baked into the Korean beauty ideal. Sophie Jin argues that this was not the result of idealizing whiteness, but the result of Koreans attempting to formulate a new national identity separate from their former colonizer Japan. This look is sometimes called K-face by sociologists. Yip, Ainsworth, and Hugh note that this beauty standard is supposed to signal global integration and cosmopolitanism, and that the strategic combining of European elements with a predominantly Asian look gives off a worldly appearance.
Yeah, I mean, if the K-pop stars are going to succeed around the world, they need to be somewhat relatable, perhaps. I mean, I'm not saying that should be the case, but it kind of is the case. So I guess incorporating some elements of how people look, at least in some Western countries, where all of these different albums are bought and concerts are presented, tying all that together can potentially, of course, create an even bigger superstar. And if that is the goal, then I think that's partly why we're seeing some of the plastic surgery trends that we're seeing.
It's very similar to Instagram face that we have in the West, in the way that the face combines various features of, multiple races to produce a somewhat ethnically ambiguous look. But K-face is still distinctly Korean, just as Instagram face is still distinctly white. Beyond the features themselves, there's also a lot of emphasis on proportions in Korean beauty marketing. For instance, the 1:1:1 face ratio that says you should be equally balanced between your brow, your nose, and your chin. And the leg ratio that says you should have a 5:3:2 proportion between your thigh, calf, and ankle.
Yeah, I mean, I know about all these numbers. I studied them. That was part of my training in plastic surgery. The issue is this: we're all built differently. No one's perfect. It's just not possible. And there's beauty in imperfection. So the danger of all these ratios is that people start to look the same and conform to the same ideals, and we lose that individuality. And we had a video not that long ago on this concept, and that to me is concerning. Beauty is truly in the eye of the beholder, and there's just so much beauty out there that does not conform to these numbers. People can be objectively seen as beautiful, and they don't have these numbers. And also, some people who are not maybe conventionally seen as beautiful can still very much find someone who loves them and can, create a great life together. So that's sometimes, I think, important to remember. And I think we need to zoom out of this specific conversation about beauty and plastic surgery in Korea and look at where are we going with this? What is the purpose, right? If the purpose is to be loved and to succeed in life, I don't think you need to conform to all of these ratios. Just my 2 cents.
The hyperfocus on proportions might stem from East Asian beliefs about first impressions. In Korea, it's a concept called insang. I'm sure the focus on specific proportions is also great industry marketing. These ratios designate seemingly objective measurements that you can measure your own body up to and thus modify accordingly at the clinic if you don't meet them. Calf Botox literally exists to atrophy the muscle in your calf so that you can hit that golden ratio.
I understand like optimizing, enhancing what you already have. Completely trying to change yourself and to try to, meet some specific ratio, I think is far from ideal as far as actually doing this type of cosmetic work. I don't have that ideal in my mind. The cosmetic surgery that I do, I just focus on hair surgery and lip surgery these days. And sometimes people will ask me, like, what's the ideal position for the hairline in general? And I said, no, like it has to be customized to you, to your face, to your preferences, to your facial bone structure, to the rest of where your hair position is currently and where your hair might be down the road. And the same goes for lips. There is no perfect filtral distance. It's relative to the person's own face. And we take a lot of other factors into consideration. What is the status of their upper tooth show? What is the status of their lip volume? How does the symmetry look? How does the bottom third of the face balance out with the rest of the face? I mean, there's so many of these elements. So just trying to hit some specific ratio on someone's face that is not meant to conform to that ratio, I think is really problematic, both in terms of results, but also in the person's like mental state. If they feel like they have to hit it, right? And if they don't, that there's something wrong with them. That's not a great way to live.
These objective ratios also allow people to measure other people's bodies as well. A few years ago, BBoss TV published a YouTube video called 9 Female Idols with Most Insane Body Proportions in K-Pop. In their video, they analyzed different idol bodies to determine who has the best body of each group. Crazy stuff. If you look in the comments, also, most of them are stating their own opinion of who has the best body rather than asking why we're even talking about this in the first place. There's also plenty of forum posts that feed into this body discourse as well. A Reddit post asking, what do fans exactly mean when an idol has good proportions? Received an answer that mentions a head-to-body ratio known as the 8 stacked heads test. aka, the perfect body is 8 heads tall. Actually, the perfect body is 5 apples tall, but whatever. Who mentions in her book a concept called the technological gaze. She defines it as an algorithmically determined set of ideal traits for our facial and body parts that social platforms feed us through the content we scroll. It represents a power shift from an external male judging gaze to a self-policing narcissistic gaze.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the day of AI, right? I mean, all these numbers can be hyper-analyzed and people lose track of like, what is the purpose of all this? Like, why are we so fascinated by this? Why do we feel like we need to hold our idols to this standard, or why we need to change ourselves to these standards? I think everyone has the right to look and feel their best, whether that's through cosmetic surgery or just good dieting or exercising or just meditation. Whatever floats people's boats, I think is fine as long as it's done safely and it doesn't hurt that person or anyone else for that matter. But looking at all these specific numbers, I think sometimes people are missing the big picture. And by big picture, I mean, is it going to lead to true happiness, right? Because what is the point of doing any of this stuff? And I would argue that the point of plastic surgery is usually to feel a little bit happier in your own shoes, whether it's the aging process sort of taking something away or you were born a certain way. There's like, let's say, some specific feature that you're looking to adjust because you've been thinking about it for years and years and it's weighing on you. And that is a reason to potentially consider something. And we should not be chasing some special numbers. It's not a numbers game. It's a, look good, feel good game, if you will. It's not like you need to meet some special number so that people on Reddit are happy. This is not what this is about. It shouldn't be.
The self-policing tech gaze creates demand for what we should look like and also feeds it thanks to the attention economy that drives competition among the biggest tech companies. The technological gaze is present across any country that has access to social media. It's the reason why Instagram face is a thing and why everyone is getting the same treatments. Lip filler, chin lipo, rhinoplasties in America.
Yeah, and it's crazy because people are getting all this stuff done and then they still don't look like some of the models, quote unquote, on some of these platforms. And the reason is because of filters. The reason is because some of the models are fake, it's just like bots these days that are AI fake things. And then people are going for all these like invasive procedures and spending a lot of money. And then they're like, well, why don't I look like whatever person on Instagram or TikTok? And it's because none of it is real. So it's sad, I think, when people are chasing perfection or chasing a very specific look, and it's not them anymore. It's someone completely different sometimes. That's a very different approach than just trying to optimize what you have and doing it for yourself and not trying to appease anybody.
But who explains that Korea is hyper-modern, which emphasizes the technological gaze even more? After all, it's the most wired place on earth, has world-leading internet speeds, and in 2006 had the highest broadband penetration rate in the world. Seoul is also the fourth most surveyed city in the world, ranked by number of CCTV cameras per square mile. As a result, it's unsurprising there's such a heavy emphasis on visual culture. I learned a few years ago that some K-pop idols even get nostril Botox. It's because when they're performing on stage, camera operators will literally zoom in on specific idol faces while they're singing and dancing, and the quality is like 4K, so you can see every sweat droplet on their skin. And the Botox is supposed to prevent the nostrils from flaring out in a non-photogenic manner during their close-ups.
I mean, come on, like we have to leave room for like being human. Can we not be human anymore? Are we supposed to all just be robots? Like, I know AI is here and there are going to be more robots walking around amongst us that probably will look human and maybe will eventually become part robotic, but like hopefully not for a while. So like while we still are human, let's try to act that way, and a little bit of a flaring of the nostrils should not be frowned upon, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below.
I mean, if we're going to zoom in on nostrils, what can't we zoom in on? Procedures like getting your armpit colorized, shaving the back of your skull to look more rounded, and getting Botox injected into your trapezius muscles. These are all incredibly specific procedures and hardly noticeable to anyone else. But the fact that people still get them done just goes to show how stringent beauty standards have become.
Yeah, some of the more unusual procedures that I've performed in the past, and again, this is just like a few of them, but in very specific cases, we have done this. I've done hair transplants with hair going to the underarms, so the armpits, the chest, and the pubic area. So there are people with very unusual requests, and if the situation is appropriate, like for the underarm case, for example, it was a person who had mirror dry performed, which is like to reduce sweating under the arm. But as part of that, one of the potential drawbacks of that procedure is loss of hair. So there was like a circular area of hair loss under the arms, and he was someone who performed on stage. He was like in a rock band, and he was very self-conscious about the lack of hair in the underarms, especially in this kind of circular type of way. So yeah, we did a hair transplant to the underarms, and he was thrilled and much happier performing after that. Every case is a little bit unique, but cases like that should not be the standard. This is kind of a one-off.
As an example of the government's purposeful investment in the beauty industry, in the early aughts, Seoul's cosmetic surgery clinics were actually on the verge of shutdown since there weren't enough patients. But in 2007, the Korea Tourism Organization established medical tourism as one of its focus areas for growth.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like a lot of the medical tourism in most countries, it becomes like a top-down type of approach, especially from countries that maybe are not classically thought of as like powerhouses of plastic surgery, especially in like the traditional sense. I mean, now, Korea, Turkey, people really do go to this place. Mexico, they're traveling and sometimes, getting some good work done, right? But like I can tell you in the US, I don't think at all that we have like a top-down approach to our plastic surgery where you have a lot of support from the government for inviting people into the country for plastic surgery. It just isn't exactly a thing here. If anything, we get taxed at a pretty high rate the more money we make here. So yeah, but I think in other countries, the governments are happy that people are now traveling more, spending more money in their countries. So in many ways, they're promoting the medical tourism into their countries, not just for general leisurely, travel and vacationing to their countries, but specifically for getting some of this work done. They're obviously benefiting from these clinics operating and existing in their countries. So again, something that I don't really often stop to think about But I think that partly explains why some of these countries have grown quite a bit in their plastic surgery outputs. And yeah, it's largely promoted by the governments. So that's interesting.
Today, a medical tourism support center greets visitors at the Incheon International Airport, the entry point for the hundreds of thousands who visit South Korea for procedures each year.
The one other thing I'll say about that like imagine if there's a complication. You have a complication from a procedure. If in that country where you get the procedure, the government is promoting plastic surgery and making a lot of money of that sector, do you think they're going to be as inclined and motivated to reveal the exact details of your complication to, let's say, your home country or to news outlets? Or do you think they might sweep that under the rug? Something to think about, right, when you're choosing where to go for cosmetic plastic surgery. And that's not me talking people out of traveling to different countries. That's fine for plastic surgery if they've done their homework. But even in the best of hands, things happen, right? And how will that local government respond to your situation? Are they going to provide the right set of support for your family to visit you and to reveal like what exactly happened? Or are they going to want to keep it hush hush so that it doesn't disrupt the flow of economic improvements to their country? So something to think about.
You can also get a value-added tax refund if you get a cosmetic procedure that is over 15,000 Korean won or about 11 USD. As a result of this effort, the Korean beauty industry grew exponentially. In 2009, about 60,000 foreigners visited Korea for procedures. By 2019, the number of medical tourists reached nearly 500,000. By 2018, Korea boasted the most cosmetic surgeons and most plastic surgery per capita on Earth. In her investigative piece on Korea's plastic surgery industry, Patricia Marks visited a clinic in the so-called improvement quarter of the Gangnam district. She notes that in this area, there were between 400 and 500 clinics and hospitals within a square mile. Because of how popular Korea is as a medical tourism destination, there are now cottage industries of medical tour guides.
And many of these clinics will recruit different types of celebrities or influencers from all around the world so that they go there and they can speak highly of, their experience. And, there's a lot of heavy promotion on social media from, various countries and various clinics from different countries. And so there's a lot of eyeballs on clinics from all over that, again, serves as a wonderful marketing arm for those clinics, and it draws a lot of people in, and the prices are oftentimes better than some other countries. That's, I think, partly what has allowed it to flourish to the extent that it has.
I still remember the first time I witnessed an influencer publicizing her medical tourism journey. This was back in 2017, so it was pretty shocking and memorable. She actually had a deal with a medical tourism agency called Doc Finder Korea. They essentially acted as a middleman, helping her to book her appointments, transportation, and accommodations. And with everything taken care of, it honestly starts to seem more like a vacation than a hospital visit.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the marketing tricks, is that there's always that illusion of it being just like, oh, it's just a wonderful vacation and I'm going to get something done. But like, don't be fooled. Like, that something is something that is permanently changing your life and your face or your body, and you can't really reverse it. And so don't think of it as like a vacation. Think of it as like you're going to get a real medical procedure that has potential consequences. So think it through and don't be drawn in just by some illusion of a vacation, which it is not.
There are plenty of travel vloggers who will go to Seoul and feature a cosmetic procedure as just one item on their travel itinerary, along with eating delicious food and exploring the city.
Oh my gosh, this smells so good.
So, what's the next step for the industry then? To build tourist attractions around the hospitals, obviously, Marks notes that one clinic she visited had its own plastic surgery museum, complete with, among other oddments, deformed skulls, post-operative shampoo, and a funhouse mirror.
The other thing is, like, when you get these different surgeries done, you need time to recover. You should not be running around, the city doing all these things. Like, you should be resting and recovering. I don't know how that affects people's ultimate recovery if they're doing all these events, but sometimes you just need to rest.
Websites like Visit Korea will actually advertise a combination of medical procedures and tourist destinations, with one itinerary titled Medical Tour Guide to Muon. Enjoy the city embracing the sea and tidal flats. The itinerary lists hospitals along with restaurants and natural wonders.
It's like, get your rhinoplasty and head to parasailing the next day.
So it's these kinds of luxuries and experiences that help make Korea a popular destination for medical tourism. But you might be wondering, why participate in medical tourism at all? Why go through the lengths of getting procedures over in another country when there are plenty of specialized doctors in many of our home countries?
Because it's cheaper. That's the number one reason why people go abroad, for surgery. And then, of course, there's the perception of expertise. When you have countries and clinics that are doing such volume of cases, sometimes it gives off the impression that, well, isn't this then the best place if they're doing so much of it? And while the answer may in some cases be yes, other times it's because it's like turned into like a mill. You show up and it's you and 50 other people getting the same thing done, and that doesn't necessarily bode well for individualized, customized care. So that's something to keep in mind. And so some people definitely are traveling because they think that's the best place, and it's not just about, saving some money. But I think in most cases still, the main reason for medical tourism for cosmetic plastic surgery is for people to spend less. And that's, just reality. A lot of people cannot afford plastic surgery in the place where they live. That's just what it is. I think that's really what's driving a lot of this travel, because they feel that it is possible for them, but they might need to fly to be able to afford the procedures that they're looking to do. That's, I think, the number one reason.
Well, a lot of procedures are actually cheaper in Korea than my home country of America. A Bloomberg article interviewed Julie Miller, a 46-year-old from New Jersey who was flying to South Korea to get Botox and skin tightening.
Botox might not be the most cost-effective thing to do like that far from home, because you have to repeat it every 3 months or so. So that's something you might want to do closer to home, because by the time you pay for your travel and all that and accommodations, it might actually be more expensive. But for something like a more cosmetic, surgical procedure, it might be financially more affordable than doing it locally at home, especially in the US.
Rebecca Chung Wilkins reports for Bloomberg. It's a trip that'll take her about a day, and the final bill for those treatments isn't cheap, about $3,000, but it's almost half the cost of doing it back home. She's right. Prices are cheaper. At Oracle, a clinic in Seoul, an entire region of Botox is as cheap as $30, whereas the same procedure in LA would be $200. As for double eyelid surgery, you can get one for $300 in Seoul. The price for the procedure in the US is 10 times higher.
But if complications do occur, and this I see sometimes with people who contact our clinic, they go somewhere far away. They, let's say, live in New York, but they traveled really far to some other country for plastic surgery. And then they come back, right, like a week later, and they're having an issue. Issues occur. It doesn't mean that the doctor wasn't good, but like they could be having a little infection or a big infection, or there could be something wrong with the wound, or they might have stitches still in, and they don't know what to do about that. So then they reach out to a clinic, let's say like mine, and they ask for more emergent help. And we often at that stage don't really want to get involved, to be honest with you. And the same goes for a lot of doctors who, where that's not my patient and they're having a wound infection, I tell them to go to the emergency room where they can get the proper care. I tell them they can visit us once they've recovered from their acute issue if they're looking to adjust anything on the cosmetic side. And that's the way it often goes for people when they go far away and they can't reach their clinic again because the clinic's not answering, or they're on a different time zone and they just can't reach them. They can't get the proper medication because it's not like they're going to be sent an antibiotic from Korea or from Turkey when they're having a problem, and they don't have any other option but to go to like the urgent care or go to the ER. And then that care could actually be very expensive still in their home country. So people don't often think ahead, but it's important to.
Jungmi Jun, a researcher at USC, reported in her 2015 study that major surgeries in Korea are offered at a price 2 to 8 times lower than in the United States. Some hospitals will also price treatments low to get patients into their clinics in hopes that those patients will return for more expensive procedures later on. I also have multiple East Asian friends who just do not trust American doctors, believing that these doctors are uninformed about East Asian facial features and proportions and will botch them as a result.
There's definitely something to be said for going to someone who understands, your ethnicity, who understands your features, what your goals are. And of course, every person is different and every procedure needs to be modified to that person's, goals. But there are plenty of doctors in the US and in many other countries who do understand the nuances and, would do excellent work. You just have to find those doctors who specialize in it. So just do your homework and you'll find those individuals. Yeah, they're there. It's just like you have to look around.
And as I said before, the specificity of the procedures that you didn't even know you needed helped to reinforce Korea's reputation as a technologically advanced country that will take care of you. Unless they don't. Like any country with a beauty industry, human error, predatory marketing, and clinics focused on bottom line profits will lead to botched results or even death. There's also a number of factors specific to medical tourism that can pose additional problems, such as the lack of translators and presence of illegal brokers. Personally, I find that the best recommendations for anything from medical doctors to restaurants to hiking trails, they all come from people I actually know, people who I trust to have gotten this firsthand experience. When you're a foreigner, unless you have friends or family based in that country that can tell you what's up, for the most part, you're going to have to rely on the internet to get your recommendations. And as the saying goes, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, reviews can be potentially adjusted by the clinic, right? The marketing tactics can be very difficult to tease out from what's actually going on. Like, how do you truly know that anything you're reading online is real? It's hard to just rely on that. Of course, word of mouth is always going to be the most powerful. But I think first and foremost, if you have a good sense of who the provider is, the actual doctor that's treating you, that's really important. A lot of times these clinics just promote the clinic in general. And again, that goes for some places in the United States as well. And what I often say to people getting any type of plastic surgery is know who your doctor is, know their pedigree, know the work that they've actually produced, get a sense of their personality. If they're just hiding behind some clinic name and they're kind of this faceless personality, it's very difficult to trust them, I think. And then if you just show up and trust the clinic, but you don't actually know which doctor you're getting, it could be a recipe for disaster potentially.
Predatory people across Reddit and other online forums will post fake reviews all the time. Even though this is illegal, some posters receive commissions from bringing in clients, which is why they do it. Doctors will also pay commissions to brokers who help foreign patients match with their clinics. I should add this is illegal for domestic patients. Korean law also prohibits the use of influencers for testimonial marketing, but influencers are often still part of a clinic's marketing scheme. The actual experience of getting the surgery can also be overwhelming and confusing. One American named Alex, who traveled to South Korea for a rhinoplasty, said she was rushed into surgery despite having reservations and not being able to speak with an in-house translator. After the surgery, she experienced complications including disfigurement due to the implant protruding through her skin, which forced her to get an emergency removal surgery in the US, which I'm sure was an extra wad of cash.
Yeah, we don't often hear about these kind of horror stories and problems that occur both domestically and abroad. And again, it's just scary when you don't have much recourse. If it happened elsewhere and then you travel back home and now you have to deal with all those problems and you can't even talk to your doctor, you can't get your op note as to what exactly happened, which makes it much more difficult to be treated in your home country. So medical tourism has a lot of issues, and I think more and more lately it's become this promoted thing that is just seen as such a positive. I'm going to go on a vacation and pay just a fraction of the cost and get this amazing result. And while that does happen for some people, there are a lot of more problematic instances that people don't often hear about. And so I don't think that's a very balanced perspective to have.
She told Al Jazeera, "I felt abandoned, like I was on a conveyor belt."
Yeah, I had a patient once who showed up to Turkey for a hair transplant, and he realized that he was in this large room, this common room with all these other guys. He said at least 40 people in the room, and they were all patients for that day that were going to get their hair transplants done. And they were getting shuttled into these small little procedure rooms with teams of technicians in one facility. The sheer volume that they're doing is actually insane. So you have 40 surgeries going on under maybe one doctor's supervision, and that's a scary thing. So that patient actually saw what was happening. And even though he already prepaid for his procedure, he ended up leaving and he came back and had surgery with us. And he was just like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So, that happens too. Some people, they actually get to travel and then they change their minds. You got to always have an out. You should never feel so pressured, even on the day of. If you don't want to do it, just forget about the money. You might lose the money, but if it doesn't feel right, just go. Just leave and find another place.
Once they had done the surgery, they didn't want to deal with me anymore. They kept saying I was still healing when I knew something was seriously wrong. Frustrated by inadequate aftercare and unable to secure a refund, Alex wrote a review with photos on the Gangnam Uni app, a popular plastic surgery review platform marketed as Uni outside South Korea. Eager to avoid negative publicity, the hospital offered a full refund, but only after she agreed to delete the review and sign a confidentiality agreement. The document, which was reviewed by Al Jazeera, prohibited her from discussing the contents of the agreement and her experience on any platform, with failure to comply resulting in financial penalties. Malpractice is everywhere. There's an entire reality TV show dedicated to fixing bad plastic surgery in the US.
You have to realize that it's sometimes a subjective thing too. Even if there was no complication in a surgery, a patient might just not be happy. They might not like the process, experience that they had. Maybe someone said something to them. Maybe it was like the receptionist or someone on the clinical team, and then they just kind of left a bad taste in their mouth. It's just like restaurant reviews, right? When you read them, it's not like necessarily that the food is bad. It's like they weren't seated on time or something, and it's like 1 star. So there's that. And then, of course, there's like just the subjectivity of the interpretation of the result. Some people just are not happy, even though objectively the surgery went according to plan. And if you ask like people to review the results, let's say like maybe 9 out of 10 would say, hey, this is a great outcome. But for that person, that's not what they thought it was going to be. And so they might not be happy. So it's not always like you have to have had some like terrible thing, like an implant extruding or a bad infection or ended up in the hospital to just not be happy with the outcomes. And that's something I think people need to realize when it comes to plastic surgery and figuring out if a clinic is a good clinic or not a good clinic, and they have some bad reviews. Well, what was the source of that bad review and what exactly happened in that case? And the truth is, like with any business, really, there's no way to make every single person happy every single time. And that's something that's been a hard realization for me, doing cosmetic plastic surgery now for the past 7 years in my own practice. I've had to come to terms with like, I can't make everyone happy. I can do my very best. I can try to minimize complication risks and all this type of stuff and really listen to my patients and try to deliver the best care and outcomes. And at the end of the day, I'm still going to have some, hopefully small percentage, which it is, who are just not going to be like completely satisfied. And that's reality. And that's reality no matter where you go, anywhere in the world. But of course, you want to go to someone who can give you the best possible chance of success. And hopefully you see eye to eye with the doctor and you have a good plan and the plan is executed very well. And then usually things result in a very predictable way, but you cannot make everyone happy. And that's one other thing I think worth mentioning.
Some procedures are also just more difficult to do than others. They're more high risk. BBLs have a notoriously high mortality rate compared to other surgical procedures. I'm not too familiar with the American legal system, which I'm sure is tricky to deal with even for citizens. But if you get a procedure abroad, it's even more difficult to navigate because you're not a citizen, so you have different rights. And I'm assuming you don't speak the local language, so you'll need translators, you'll need to somehow find a lawyer, etc. Additionally, it's hard to get restitution if an accident does occur because Korea has strict defamation laws that make it very difficult for anyone to sue. There's also the issue with ghost doctors, aka doctors who perform a surgery that another surgeon was hired for.
Yeah, this is what I was getting at. Like people just go to the clinic blindly. Like they're not actually like going to any specific doctor. And then the clinic just like plugs in the doctor for the day. And you don't know like what their experience is. And like, are they the doctor that produced the results on the website that you were seeing, or was that done by some other doctor and now they have this new doctor working for them? And like it's just it can be very difficult to interpret and to be fully prepared for when you're arriving for your actual surgery.
They come into the operating room when the patient is under general anesthetic. It's technically illegal, but regulations are not heavily enforced because it's hard to prove. Many clinics don't have CCTV cameras in their operating rooms and patients are knocked out.
Yeah, most of my surgeries these days are done under local anesthesia, so patients are are generally awake and they kind of know what's going on, which I think is a safer way to do things. Certain surgeries, of course, cannot be done that way and people need to be put under. And then it's scary to think that, yeah, this could be something that happens to you. I mean, that's frightening, no matter what country it's happening. I've heard of stuff like this happening in the United States too. So again, it's not typically like a country thing. Like people want to compare countries and be like, this one's better than this one for this surgery or that surgery. It's not about that. It's about, at the end of the day, a specific surgeon being responsible for your life and your surgical outcome and the team that they've assembled to work with them to help you achieve your goals. And that is how you should think of it when you're, trying to research, like, where should I go? That's the way to think about it, not just like the country or the clinic or whatever. It's the doctor, because that's who's responsible for you.
The reason the ghost doctor industry exists is because of how high demand these clinics are, but rather than just accepting fewer clients, they hire ghost doctors, usually younger, less experienced doctors to maximize profits. Joe Elfing Huang, an associate professor of Korean studies at the University of Western Australia, told CNN that high-profile surgeons often use K-pop stars or celebrities to promote their clinic. But during busy periods, some just can't deal with the volume of patients, especially as star doctors also need to be available for consultations with new customers. Ghost doctors operate illegally in America too, but laws in Korea are pretty relaxed, even when malpractice is proven.
Because again, this work is being sanctioned in some way, as she's mentioned earlier, financially by the government. So of course they're going to turn more of a blind eye to stuff like this happening because they have a lot to gain financially, like the political leaders, the whole function of the country, right? They're getting tax money from these clinics and all of that. I mean, I think in the States, our higher ups don't exactly think of it in that same way when it comes to plastic surgery specifically. I mean, they do, I think, in broader terms, but not necessarily for plastic surgery. So our rules are quite strict here, and we will get in trouble for things that are not done to a T if there's ever an investigation or whatever. So things have to be done properly and in the safest way possible, right? If you don't want to get into legal trouble, but of course, if you also have the patient's best interests in mind. So keep that all in mind.
For example, one doctor who asked a nurse to perform eyelid or nose plastic surgeries at least 90 times received only a 3-month suspension. Between 2008 and 2014, the Korean Society of Plastic Surgeons estimated that there were about 100,000 victims of ghost surgery in South Korea. I should clarify that just because you're treated by a ghost doctor doesn't mean anything bad will happen to you, but it is concerning to not know what's happening, and also it is illegal. So yeah, just not good. Overall, I'm not saying that Korea is a bad place to get work done. Obviously, many people go without any issues. But I think everyone at the very least should be informed no matter what country they go to, no matter what specific clinic they go to. Korea has this really good reputation, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do any research. There was a girl on TikTok that went viral recently, but she deleted her video, maybe because she was avoiding getting sued for defamation. But she was permanently blinded by her doctor in Korea when getting filler injected.
Remember also that these different procedures have real risk no matter who does them, right? So blindness can happen from filler in any country, by any doctor. Of course, there are things that can be done to minimize that risk, but it can never be brought down to zero.
People just have so much trust in these institutions, but you only have one body, so just be as informed as you possibly can if you must get a procedure. Despite the risks, cosmetic surgery has become pretty normalized both in Korea and in LA. A 2020 Gallup poll found that since the early 2000s, 70% of Koreans don't view cosmetic surgery as taboo. 1 in 3 women surveyed, all between the ages of 19 and 39, had undergone cosmetic surgery. 59% of men said they would get plastic surgery to improve their chances on the job market, a number that shot up 30% since 1994.
Yeah, and for men, the most common cosmetic procedure the last time I checked was liposuction, but then the next most common, I believe, is hair transplant surgery. So that has been on the rise, especially with the advent of FUE surgery, where the harvesting is done one at a time. And remember, we do FUE surgery for men and for women, but guys are seeing it as a great option to restore their hair because they can avoid that linear scar on the back of the head. So that's something that's been on the rise for a number of years. And it's interesting that there's less overall taboo. I think overall that's a good thing. But there's also, more people just being kind of shown this stuff all the time and maybe feeling some pressure to get some procedures done that they otherwise wouldn't have really thought of or cared about. And I think maybe that's, not a great thing. So it's a balance. I think people should have the option and the choice to do these procedures, especially if they're done safely and in good hands. But I think the pendulum in recent years is maybe swinging too far over in the direction of everyone should get plastic surgery. I don't think that should be the case either. So finding some in between is going to be a healthier way for, I think, society in general to move ahead.
Korean American journalist Jane Chung wrote for Business Insider that when she was 14, her family offered her double eyelid surgery as a middle school graduation gift. Chung refused because at the time she believed that permanent body modification was, quote, a tool of patriarchy to control and subdue women. She's not wrong.
Yeah, I don't think that these surgeries should be pushed by the families of individuals. I think that it should be very much the individual's own decision. This type of permanent modification with cosmetic plastic surgery, we should give our youth a chance to grow into their bodies and to decide for themselves if this is something that they want to do, not something that's pushed as a graduation gift. I think that's ridiculous.
Chung is not the only one who's been offered plastic surgery as a graduation gift, though. It's common enough in South Korea that dermatology and plastic surgery apps offer up to 50 to 70% off discounts to recent high school grads in a 3-pack of popular procedures: eyelid surgery, nose jobs, and Botox for jaw contouring.
A 3-pack? What is this, cereal? I mean, it's crazy.
Patricia Marks interviewed a Korean college student who said, when you're 19, all the girls get plastic surgery. So if you don't do it, after a few years, your friends will all look better, but you will look like your unimproved you. There's a statistic that 1 in 4 Korean mothers with daughters between the ages of 12 and 16 have suggested plastic surgery to them. An anonymous Korean woman told Vice that the pressure comes from wanting their kids to be socially accepted. She says, everyone is getting prettier, and some parents don't want their child to be the ugly one. It's like in the 90s if you got a Discman because your parents didn't want you to be the only kid at school without one.
Slippery slope, because we're just subjecting our youth to these not easily reversible procedures that they might later regret. And how would the parent feel if their kid has a complication during one of these cosmetic procedures? Hopefully not well. So I don't believe in that. I think that's the wrong approach. I would never suggest to my daughter, who's 6, by the way, right now, that she should get something done, ever. If anything, we're just always, as parents, with my wife, are telling her how beautiful she looks, and more importantly, how smart and caring she is. And we want her to feel as good as possible in her shoes. If she one day has something that she wants done and has a great reason for it and has really given it time and has thought it through over the course of years, not like a month, I will support her decision and help her find the best possible doctor who can help her. But I will be more than happy if she never wants to do a cosmetic plastic surgery procedure, especially, in her kind of younger years of, let's say 20s, 30s. Beyond that, then the aging process takes hold and people have different views. But what she's talking about is teenagers, right? Getting these kind of graduation gifts. Never. It's just not happening for my family anyway. But I think, again, everyone approaches this stuff differently and has different views. But I don't think that this should be a global phenomenon that is, condoned by the rest of us. It shouldn't be that. And there's a movie, I think it's called Uglies. It's some sort of dystopian movie. Yeah, it's like a science fiction novel by Scott Westerfeld. It kind of highlights some of these general themes that we're discussing. So if you guys want to check that out, I think it's out on Netflix or something like that.
This weirdly reminds me of the whole Japanese bento box phenomenon. Walk with me here. In Japan, it's common for mothers to invest a lot of energy into preparing aesthetically pleasing bento boxes or lunch boxes for their children. It can take hours to prepare all the ingredients, source the right tools, and shape all the foods. Ruriko Tomita, a 43-year-old Japanese woman with 2 young children, told National Geographic that she knows mothers who get up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning cutting seaweed with scissors. mothers. Mariko Oi wrote for BBC about this and explained that the reason why they do this is because there is an underlying guilt that we, many Japanese working mothers, feel. It was our choice not to give up our careers, so our children shouldn't suffer because of it. She also notes that this is an expectation put on mothers by their communities as well. One woman confessed to her, "The pressure that my bento must be judged by the teachers makes it even more stressful." Makiko Ito, author of the Just Bento cookbook, says that bento is a reflection of parenthood. A lot of it is caused by the fact that many parents want to get their kids into a good kindergarten, and for that, they have to pass the test. So the better the parents perform in their parental duties, including making the right lunches, the more likely their children will be accepted by good schools and receive a better education.
Wow. So it all starts with a gray bento box. I had no idea. I just visited Japan earlier this year. We released a video about my trip with my dad, if you want to check it out. And yeah, this is something that didn't really come up on the trip, but kind of fascinating to think that you need to perfect the bento box and be better than other mothers making bento boxes to get into a good kindergarten. There's a lot we do in the US as well to try to get our kids into certain schools and for them to outshine other people. I mean, it's kind of an arms race, I guess, to a degree. But yeah, the bento box phenomenon so far has not hit the States, but something I think analogous we already have here.
A 36-year-old Japanese woman named Kyoko Sudo also told Nat Geo her personal experience of being bullied over bento when she was in school. She recounted, "Kids started complaining about what my mother made."
Maybe the equivalent here is like all the extracurriculars that we need to put our kids through so that they're constantly active and constantly doing well and excelling in ways that then we can put on a resume. You know, my kid goes to karate and to ballet class and to pottery and to, you know, an extra language and math tutor. And it's just like so much that we put in our kids when at the end of the day, I think they just want to be kids and they want time to play and to be with their friends and not just go to a million classes in addition to school. So it's interesting.
Maybe Kyoko's family is very poor because she only has one egg and one sausage. They judged me and my family, you know. So in a similar fashion, I think that a lot of the parents encouraging their kids to get plastic surgery are coming from a good place. You know, they want their kids to fit in, to not be bullied, to get good jobs later in life, and they don't want to be judged as being bad parents, etc. But ultimately, it is another pressure point that reinforces structural lookism. Lookism is social prejudice against those who fail to meet a certain appearance standard, and the word stems from the fat acceptance movement. Lookism is prohibited by a 1995 Korea law, but Helen Chu, a Korean beauty entrepreneur, explains that often the first thing anyone says when they meet you is related to looks. And as I said, it's structural. A 2017 South Korean poll found that nearly 40% of respondents experienced discrimination based on their appearances when applying for jobs. Up until 2019, when the practice became illegal, it was common for job applications to require headshots from their candidates. Job listings will also use terms like neat and beautiful to describe ideal candidates. One advertisement that drew media attention specified C as the ideal bra cup size.
And again, with like AI that we have today, I think more and more people will maybe fake some of these headshots to get a certain job interview, for example. Of course, it might be harder for them to fake it once they show up, but at least it might get them in the door. Yeah, I think, you know, there's something to be said for trying to compete with other families, for example, to get your kids into a school with a bento box or classes they might take outside of the school. But to do it with plastic surgery, I think that's maybe going a little bit too far. It's just pushing the concept and then the premise a little just too far, in my opinion, you know, because you're really putting excessive risk onto your kid and you're opening them up to something that they cannot later reverse. So I don't like that approach. And I hope that it doesn't continue to move more and more that direction. Maybe we'll all start to feel a little bit more awakened and maybe just reverse this course. That is my goal, because I don't like the image of what this will look like if everyone just starts to adopt these types of approaches when it comes to plastic surgery being pushed onto kids by their families.
Even the Ministry of Employment and Labor once shared a link on Twitter encouraging job seekers to mind their looks, suggesting cosmetic surgery has become one of the 7 credentials needed for employment, and asking what type of face companies preferred for its applicants. The post has since been removed. So it's not a purely superficial interest to get work done. There are actual consequences for being ugly. And honestly, I think if I was in a situation where I literally could not get a job because of the way I looked, I would consider plastic surgery way more seriously.
Yeah, I think if there's a specific job that you want and there's a certain requirement of appearance, then maybe then, it makes sense to consider getting something done. But there's always like a different path to take. You can always get a job where maybe your look is not as critical. It's not like every job is completely like client facing. So, yes, it stinks to have to maybe modify your original game plan. But, plenty of people want to be, basketball superstars or as professional athletes, but they maybe just don't have the right height. They don't have the right speed. And so, I think if someone wants to be a K-pop star, but maybe they don't have the exact physical attributes to do that, maybe then it makes sense to get something done. I get it if that's specifically what you want to do. But there is always some job that will be happy to have you in that industry with any type of appearance or any type of physical attribute. And so I think it's sad when people feel like they have to get something done, but I also understand why maybe for certain types of jobs it's a lot more critical than others. I wish it wasn't the case, but I do understand what she's getting at here.
Obviously, I'm not in support of the cosmetic surgery industry because at the end of the day, this perceived independence and being able to change your appearance still reinforces a neoliberal mindset that each of us needs to self-improve in order to compete in the market. Also, worrying about aesthetic labor distracts us from focusing on actual structural inequality. So I don't agree with it, but I'm just saying there's reasons, and stepping outside of a system is more difficult than just paying $300 for double eyelid surgery.
But remember, it's not just about paying the money. It's about going through the recovery. It's about having to accept the risks that come with that surgery and complications that could arise. It's all those things. And remember, the complications are not always something that will just like be there for a week or two and then you're fine. I mean, if double eyelid surgery is done, for example, you could develop dry eye that will be with you for the rest of your life, right? And then you have to be on drops or get other procedures to compensate for that initial procedure that perhaps either wasn't performed exactly right or was performed perfectly well, and you still had, this type of functional problem that resulted from it. So it's about a lot more than just paying the money.
Also, every country has this kind of oppressive beauty ideal, but I think the major difference between, say, Korea and America is that Korea is more upfront about it. In America, to a certain extent, we still cloak plastic surgery discourse around feeling your best. Self-improvement language doesn't blatantly acknowledge the desire to be pretty for the approval of society. There's also still shame about getting beauty procedures. Not going to name any names, but there are many celebrities who will deny getting any work done, even when anyone with eyes can tell they did.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, again, a balance between being very, very open about work that you've had done, and then also on the flip side of that, completely denying that anything ever happened, right? There's risks to both, to society, especially when it's a celebrity of a high status that we're talking about. And I understand it, both ways. Yeah, maybe it is a cultural difference that in the States, it's not as accepted for like an A-list celebrity to say, oh, I had this procedure or that procedure, whereas maybe in Korea it's more accepted. So I get that, but I also think in Korea, these like K-pop stars, I don't know, I don't see them admitting left and right that they had, procedures A, B, C, D, E, and going even further down. So I think once you reach a certain, maybe like status as far as celebrity, I think people around the world are maybe less willing to discuss some of those procedures, and that's understandable to a degree as well.
I honestly feel like the reason plastic surgery isn't more accepted in the US is because it's less accessible here, and we have a shrinking middle class that can barely afford things, versus in Korea it's way more accessible, and so you don't have to be like upper class Hollywood to be able to afford a nose job. But not everyone is buying into the beauty industry. There's a movement in Korea called Escape the Corset that pushes back against beauty standards, with the more radical members foregoing makeup entirely and shaving their heads. Who explains why this is so brave, specifically in South Korea? The rejection of basic appearance norms comes with punishing social sanctions for Korean women. These activists have become outcasts at school and at work. Sometimes they're even uninvited to their own family gatherings. One movement member, Ho Ju-yeon, explains her experience. Instead of calling me by my name, my coworkers just call me boy. Why are you like that? They'll ask me. And my family tells me they think appearing with short hair and being makeup free is unsafe for me. Everyone comments about their own discomfort. At first, I tried to explain my thoughts and values, but that's not what they wanted to hear, so now I'm just ignored. Despite detractors, the Escape the Corset movement has successfully ignited many conversations about women's rights, and some consumption data actually shows a decline in beauty-related spending among Korean women in their 20s. I can't say for sure what caused this, but it's interesting nonetheless. Numbers from the Ministry of Economy and Finance indicate that between 2015 and 2018, sales of cosmetics, hair products, and other beauty-related goods dropped 53.5 billion Korean won, approximately $44.8 million, among women in their 20s. And this was also the time when Escape the Corset was heavily talked about.
There's always going to be factions that fight against the norm or the accepted norm. So they're doing that there. We have many of those movements here in the States as well. And I think it's great for a balancing of ideals, really, right? I think when we're just fed a certain narrative and feel the pressure to conform to that narrative, I think that can be dangerous. So having a group that looks at it differently and pushes a very different agenda of feeling free in our bodies to maybe do less, and maybe that's totally fine too, I think can be a good thing as well. So again, I think any one strong view needs to be balanced, I think, in society with something else that can bring things kind of down to reality, so we don't get too carried away with any one specific approach, especially if that approach is somewhat extreme. You know, for everyone to get plastic surgery, I don't think, how does that make sense?
I think a lot of people who don't know too much about Korea and are only exposed to K-pop and the industry abuses going on there, I think they perceive Korea as being a looks-obsessed country. But there's different motivations for why someone might be obsessed with looks that go beyond just individual vanity. And it's after reading these resources, especially Elise Hu's Flawless, that, I can't stop promoting because it's so good. But after reading these things, that I feel like I'm able to understand more the nuances behind the beauty industry and why it's difficult to make broad stroke statements like, we should just not wear makeup and not get plastic surgery.
Honestly, it's kind of like AI, like people are saying, oh, we should just get rid of AI. Some people are saying, ban AI. I don't think that we're going to be able to ban AI. So let's learn to work with it and to control it and to, create safeguards in many ways. And I think the same thing goes for plastic surgery. Like, we don't need to be going around banning plastic surgery. I think it has a lot of positives that come out of it. But we also shouldn't be just, saying that everyone's got to do this, and it's got to be properly managed and controlled, essentially, as a tool. I think starts with individuals who are considering these types of surgeries. It also extends to the doctors performing these surgeries. And then, of course, how governments either supervise or don't supervise, some of this work and promote it versus not promote it. There's different ways that the government can get involved for better or worse. But yeah, these are all great things that we need to be discussing. Meaning that they're important to discuss. And I hope that, videos like Mina's and like this reaction get people talking and putting out different ideas, the pros and cons of doing things in different ways. There's not just like one way to think about this, but it also is here to stay. Plastic surgery is not going anywhere. So let's learn to kind of work with it and bring out the best in it, but not overuse it and not create a complete dependence on it.
I mentioned systemic issues before, but another example, Jessica Elfing Huang interviewed 20 women living in Seoul who were 63 and over about their attitudes towards beauty. And the participants explained that beauty work in Korea, at least among elderly women, was understood in the context of respect to others. This concept was referred to as yewi, or correct social etiquette. When WHO interviewed elderly Korean American women in Orange County, their attitudes were similar in that they still believed in performing beauty work in some way. One woman, Elizabeth, exclaimed through laughter, "Let myself go? No, of course not. I still care. I put some moisturizer and a little liner to look like I'm awake." A 71-year-old woman, Jo Young Lim, drew a link between letting herself go and being unhealthy. If we're laying in a hospital, then we're, burdening our children. These attitudes are reminiscent of what journalist Autumn Whitefield Medrano wrote as a defense on beauty in 2016. The number one thing I hear from women when I ask about their reasons for performing beauty work is not that they want to change how they look, but that they want to look like their best selves. It may be human to dream of transformation, but it is practical to dream of simply looking all the time the way we do when we're rested, fed, watered, well-sexed, and nicely groomed. In other words, the reason we perform beauty work is because we are engaged in chronic hope. I think about my own grandma, who is retired, married, and mostly only sees people she's known for years, aka people who absolutely do not care what she looks like. Yet, she styles her hair, keeps her nails painted, and does an elaborate makeup routine every morning. I think about myself and how I feel a lot worse if I don't change out of my pajamas all day, even if I, don't intend to leave my house. A lot of these attitudes have to do with social conditioning. Like, we maybe wrongfully associate putting on makeup with being active or taking part in community. But WHO writes, we should ask ourselves if the labor we're undertaking is ego-driven or soul-driven. Does it lead to more connection with ourselves and others, or disconnection? I think it's always valuable to know the reasons for why we go through aesthetic labor because it can help us come up with alternative methods for living a freer life. For example, if you associate putting on makeup with seeing your friends, experiment with what it means to not wear makeup and still see your friends, and figure out whether or not you can at some point disconnect the two, and then notice whether or not that disconnection brings any more meaning to your life. I don't know. It's just food for thought. I think that obviously when you put in plastic surgery in here, it adds like another wrench to the equation than just like not wearing makeup for the day, but we like to talk in absolutes when it comes to beauty discourse. I think it serves us less to think of it in those kinds of dichotomies, especially when we're talking about other cultures and, the different kinds of like structural institutions that exist that make us want to adjust our bodies in this specific way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mina in many ways. I think that we shouldn't feel like obligated to put on makeup or to get plastic surgery. In many ways, I think it should come from within. I mean, it's good to know what exists out there to be able to make an informed decision. But yeah, I don't think we should look to society to be like, okay, yeah, I guess now I have to go get this procedure done. I don't think that people should feel that degree of pressure. I know that some people do. I get it. But I really think more and more, if it comes from within, that gives the person the better chance of actually being happy with their outcomes and with life in general, right? It's not just about being happy with surgical outcomes. It's about just kind of having like a happiness to your life with every day, ideally, right? I mean, we cannot always be happy in every moment. That's not possible. But, aiming to be happier on most days, I think is a great goal. So again, thank you to Mina for making this awesome, really thought-provoking video, and hopefully you enjoyed the commentary and feedback that I had. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and this is a big topic, so lots to talk about. Thanks for watching.